Well, I don't think there's a person anywhere who doesn't understand how powerful mourning can be, how deeply moving it is to lose someone that you deeply treasure in a family or who you are married to. And because she was absolutely in love with him from the moment she first clapped eyes on him, people watching this will know in their own life of people that they are madly in love with, and to lose them, you know, particularly when you're doing such a separate job, because the Queen's job is not, you know, being Queen is so separate from everybody else. Somebody put it once that nobody can be with the Queen without benefiting from it. And in that, there is a sort of burden about carrying that through life, that people, when they come, take great joy at being close to her, but also, you know, in a way, she has to be separate from everybody by the nature of what kingship is. But, you know, she was always able throughout life to be distracted by horses in particular, not least her racing. And she was terribly keen always. And I bet today, even today, she will be given updates on how her horses are and what they're up to. And that will fascinate her. You know, she took regular phone calls from all the people looking after her horses. And you're showing some footage now of the Queen when we had the privilege as the armed forces of presenting our loyalty to Her Majesty in Edinburgh. And it was the only occasion, actually, during the Platinum Jubilee that the armed forces were able to express a personal act of loyalty to the Queen. And it was very intimate in that it was a very small ceremony, and she was utterly delighted by it. She smiled from beginning to end, and she took in the usual rituals of ceremonial, and she was as much a part of it as she ever is. And she loves those moments. I think she knows how soldiers, sailors, airmen and women are bonded to her personally by that act of loyalty and by their oaths of allegiance. And when each of the armed forces came up to her, the Royal Navy with the Royal Marines, the Army and the Air Force, all of it meant a great deal to her. And she goes on knowing every single day of her life what is going on to the armed forces. And right now, as the armed forces face challenges, you know, she is still the emblematic and figurehead focus of all loyalty for those people who serve. And I think, you know, people throughout the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth have seen her sense of continuity, her desire to always be present. And right now, she's not feeling 100%, and members of the family have been gathered to be with her at what appears to be a very critical time.
And you mentioned that the military being important to her, and also the Commonwealth, as you just mentioned there, that is something that has very much defined her reign, and something that she has stuck with the importance of throughout.
You can be something as a monarch, or you can actually live it fully. And the Queen has entirely lived fully the concept of what it means to be head of the Commonwealth. She watched her father shape the idea of that leadership in an assembly of free independent nations who choose to have a collective head and to meet in order to celebrate shared values. And the Queen has kept abreast day by day with the good times and the bad through the Commonwealth story, and has provided, I think, as perfect an emblem of good grace and fine behaviour as any organisation could choose to have as their head. And for the Queen, that has never stopped. And I will not be proved until someone tells me, but I'll bet you that even yesterday, the Queen will have had her red boxes, and in those boxes would have been details, despite the fact that people are still coming back to work, of what is going on in different nations, particularly the details of the new government. And of course, with her 15th Prime Minister, there's quite a lot of mechanics of government that the head of state needs to take part in. And all of that plays its part in, I think, making the job such a rich one and an interesting one for the Queen, and that she absolutely loves it and is fascinated by all the challenges she faces. From the very moment she was told her father had died in February 1952 until today, she is fixed on that role. It is not one that ends at any point. It continues all her life. And right now, our thoughts are with her as her family gather.
Alistair, thanks very much. Well, let's now bring in royal historian and author Dr. Anna Whitelock, who joins us now. And Anna, just as Alistair was saying there, you know, the fact that a lot of people will be really feeling very strongly for her family today. And we heard from the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, that it's an afternoon of sombre reflection and anxiety for many.
I think it is. I mean, it's obviously a moment of profound sort of national, I don't know, crisis, but it's certainly a national moment of wobble. I think the nation and the world kind of holds its breath for the announcement. But of course, first and foremost, it is a private family event. And the family, of course, are travelling to Balmoral to be with the Queen, which is, of course, what she would absolutely want and what anybody would want. Balmoral is also a place of great peace for her. She likes being at Balmoral. But yeah, I mean, it's a very poignant moment. We're in the twilight hours, I think. And, you know, we wait and we wait for that announcement. There is a sense, I think, in the United Kingdom, you know, we've just got a new Prime Minister. We lost one a couple of days ago with the outgoing Boris Johnson. There's a bit of a national mood of what next? And I think having seen the Queen appoint Liz Truss at Balmoral, the pictures of her in the paper, certainly looking smaller and shrunken, but smiling and a sort of twinkle in her eye, holding on to that stick. But the news, you know, turns quite dramatically. And yeah, and now we just wait. And of course, it's been an extraordinary reign, 70 years, 15 prime ministers, her 15th just the other day, her first Winston Churchill. Are really quite remarkable. And I think whether you're a monarchist or not, whether you think the thing is, you know, the monarchy is something that's outdated or a great thing in our society and for our country, I think there is a great sense of, gosh, for most people. They haven't known any other monarch than the Queen. She's been around for 70 years. She's kind of, you know, she's on our stamp, she's on our coins. Gosh, what now? I think that's the sense for most people.
Anna Whitelock, she is up there at Balmoral. It's where she normally spends her summers. It's a place that's been really dear to her. There is a poignancy, isn't it, to the fact that this is a place that her family are now coming to see her.
I mean, it's where the family spent great, happy times. I mean, at the death of Prince Philip, there are pictures of the family released at Balmoral. So, yeah, it's a special place. It's a place where the Queen, I think, would want to be, actually. So in that sense, you know, she's in the place that she would want to be at this time.
What do you make of how the royal family has, I suppose, pivoted over the last few years? We've seen the Queen step back slowly from royal duties, but also seen this sense coming from Prince Charles that he wants to see the royal family coming behind her, behind him, to be much smaller. Oh, I'm afraid we've lost Anna Whitelock, but that was the royal historian and author Dr. Anna Whitelock talking to us on Sky News.
Just keep saying that we've lost Brady.
A very good afternoon. This is Sky News live from Buckingham Palace, which says that Her Majesty the Queen is under medical supervision after her doctors became concerned about her health. A statement from Buckingham Palace says this. Following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended that she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. Well, all of the Queen's children are thought to be at her side at Balmoral. The Duke of Cambridge is on his way to Scotland, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan, have cancelled their appearance at an awards ceremony on today. They're going to join the monarch and the other members of the family in Scotland. The new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has responded to the news. She has said the whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. My thoughts and the thoughts of people across our United Kingdom are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time. That from the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Also, the Archbishop of Canterbury tweeted, "My prayers and the prayers of the people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen today. It continues, may God's presence strengthen and comfort Her Majesty, her family, and those who are caring for her at Balmoral. And the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, gave this statement to MPs.
I know I speak on behalf of the entire House when I say that we send our best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen and that she and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at this moment.
Well, the Queen's former Communications Secretary, Louise Tate, joins us now. Louise, thanks again for speaking to us again. Just talk to us about what do you think will be going on at the moment in Balmoral?
Well, I think as Alistair Bruce has just said, Balmoral is a perfect house for a family to gather, and that's clearly what is happening. There will be state staff, I'm sure, in attendance, as well as Her Majesty's official team, the formal team from Buckingham Palace. It is as we would perhaps consider a holiday home. It does have that feel to it, and it has that slight informality. So clearly, this is a difficult time, but there is a good, solid team of people who are both there in their capacity as estate staff and the more official side of state business around her.
But in terms of those staff, compared to the numbers of people that would perhaps surround her when she's down in Windsor or Buckingham Palace, it is a lot more pared back, isn't it?
Well, the business of state has to continue, so there is enough staff there to facilitate that and make sure that all the daily duties of our head of state are covered effectively, and it's a seamless transition. Wherever the Queen goes, the business of state continues, and there are always the right people around her to advise and consult as needed.
I mean, of course, she is the Queen. She has duty and she has staff around her, but is there space at Balmoral for privacy, for her to have time away from everybody and just to be actually on her own?
I think it's if that was her choice, then it is there are so many ways to spend your time at Balmoral, and the royal family traditionally make very good use of so much of the outdoor space. But it's also, like I said, it's a very intimate house, and if she wanted to be on her own, I'm sure she's quite a possible thing to accomplish. Yeah.
I suppose what I'm getting at is that when a family member is ill and other family members come and join and be with them, is there an opportunity for that family to just be together as a family, or is the fact that she has a duty and the fact that she is the monarch mean that there will always be staff members around?
But it is a family, and this is family time, and I'm sure that will be respected, no doubt.
Yeah. How important is Balmoral to Her Majesty?
I'm often asked that question, and in my opinion, it's very important. It was the place, I think I said before, where up until the pandemic and I moved to Windsor, it was the place where she spent longest at any one given time. I think it's about 3 months of the year, which is a long time. I think she is, and as many members of the family, very, very fond of Scotland. They feel great affinity for Scotland, and the Scots, they understand what it takes to live and be custodian of quite a significant part of rural Royal Deeside. And I think they take that responsibility of being that custodian very, very seriously, but it's also a place where they can relax and enjoy. Up until recently, Her Majesty used to be often seen riding around the estate, and was often stood by different people, members of the public who came to spend time on the estate, as you can. In Scotland, there's no trespass law in Scotland in certain parts of the estate, and that was a routine thing. Many members of the public will recount coming across the Queen and other members of the family, well, just out for a walk or a picnic.
And it's a place where she's felt that freedom, I suppose, and it's not a freedom that she's really enjoyed much in her life.
I think Jessica enjoys a great deal of freedom. She's well. All the family are often cited by local people. They're generally left alone to go about whatever activity they're enjoying at the time, be that in Ballater or something on the estate more widely. Socialising, obviously, there's some fixtures in the calendar like Braemar Games that is dear to the heart, and it's a place where they can really relax and get away from it all. But we've heard that term remote. It's rural, I would say, rather than remote. It's not the easiest place to get to, perhaps, from London, but it's a beautiful rural location. It's a very atmospheric place, and it's somewhere that I think she's enjoyed throughout her life. And
although the Queen does stay very much apart from politics, doesn't she? And we certainly don't know her views. She has taken a keen interest, hasn't she, in the constitutional affairs of Scotland and in what's happening in the local community up there. Well, I think that's, as you might expect. She is head of state. She is. She's always taken as far as I understand, taken a lot of interest in local things. They're very involved with the Women's Institute, that kind of thing. She often attended a jumble sale local, I think it was a jumble sale, forgive me, at Crathy Kirk. So she's been a very active member of the local community in that way. And you'll see a lot of the shops in Ballater have the Royal Warrant. Louise Tate, who was the Queen's Scottish Press Secretary, thanks so much for giving us a flavour of what the Queen's time up in Balmoral means to her. Thank you. You're welcome.
We're back here at Buckingham Palace. We're going to go to Downing Street
I think so. I think
talk to our political editor, Beth Rigby. Of course, Beth, this news comes on the day of some pretty important political news, but of course that is now for obvious reasons, being overshadowed.
That's right, Dermot, and we got a sense of something very worrying happening, actually, as the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, made that statement in the Commons on energy bills. She was in the Commons, Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, on his feet at the dispatch box. And there were tweets coming out from MPs in the chamber and people in the gallery, the journalists watching what was going on, and something was happening because the Prime Minister was being urgently briefed by her Cabinet Minister Nadhim Zahawi, and then Angela Rayner, the Deputy Labour leader, was passed a note, and then she passed that information on to Sir Keir Starmer, who was at the time at the dispatch box. The Labour leader then leaving the chamber, and he returned a little later, and he had changed into a black tie. After the announcement was made from the palace about the Queen's condition, the Speaker then made a statement to the Commons confirming that, and he said, "I know I speak on behalf of the entire House when I say we send best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen. She and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at the moment. There is no more. We will update the House accordingly." Now, Dermot, since then, both the Prime Minister and the Leader of the opposition, as well as many other dignitaries, have sent their best wishes to the Queen and the royal family. The Prime Minister, Liz Truss, tweeting, "The whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. My thoughts and the thoughts of people across our United Kingdom are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time." And Sir Keir Starmer tweeted, "Along with the rest of the country, I am deeply worried by the news from Buckingham Palace this afternoon. My thoughts are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time, and I join everyone across the United Kingdom in hoping for her recovery." And so with that, the statement continued, but obviously the news of the energy package now overshadowed by concerns over the Queen and her health.
And Beth, of course, Downing Street and Buckingham Palace will be working closely together in keeping each other informed about Her Majesty's health.
Yes, that's right. They will, of course, be in contact and keeping each other informed. And the Prime Minister did return, though, to the House of Commons to continue in that debate on energy bills. You'll remember there was a pledge from Liz Truss to cap energy bills for the next 2 years for households at £2,500 a year, on average. So that was her big statement, her big first statement as Prime Minister. But obviously now the situation with the Queen far, far more important for the Prime Minister at this current time.
And of course it was only 2 days ago that the most recent picture we saw of Her Majesty was with Prime Minister Liz Truss.
Yes, Dermot, she was the 15th Prime Minister that the Queen has greeted, and we saw those lovely pictures of them as Liz Truss was anointed Prime Minister by the Queen. Typically that ceremony happens in Buckingham Palace, but of course the Queen on her annual holiday in Balmoral, it was decided that it was uncomfortable for her to make the journey to London, so both the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the current Prime Minister Liz Truss journeyed to Balmoral, and we saw those lovely pictures of the Queen smiling as she welcomed Liz Truss. As I said, she is the 15th Prime Minister that the Queen has seen into office, and that was but 2 days ago that we saw the Queen looking well, welcoming Liz Truss to the role.
And Beth, tell me just a little bit then about, people will want to know the details of this energy package.
Dermot, well, this was Liz Truss's big first announcement as Prime Minister, and what she has done is she has pledged to cap energy bills at £2,500 on average for the next 2 years for households. There's also an additional package of support for businesses that will run for 6 months with a 3-month review to sort of see how it could be extended beyond that 6-month period for the most vulnerable businesses. But I'm afraid there was no detail today on what the package for business looked like. In terms of the financing of this, we know that it will be funded through borrowing, but I'm afraid to say that the government, despite announcing the biggest intervention, we think, in peacetime from a government, much bigger than the furlough scheme, and that cost around £55 billion a year. We don't have any costings on how this will work. The Prime Minister saying that that will be outlined later in the month in a fiscal statement by her new Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. And from Labour's point of view, they made the argument that firstly, this reduction on bills, you'll remember they're meant to go up on average to £3,500 a year in October. This cap or freeze comes in on the 1st of October at £2,500. Labour pointing out that that's still £600 a year more on bills than the April cap, which is what they were proposing to introduce, and also took aim at Liz Truss for choosing to fund this through borrowing, which ultimately the taxpayer will, over perhaps many years, have to pay back, rather than the Labour's preferred choice, which is a windfall tax on excess profits of energy companies, estimated to be coming in at £170 billion. So Labour want the companies to be taxed. The Liz Truss point of view is that she needs the companies to invest in renewables, more oil and gas, fracking. She said that she will lift the ban on that in order to try and secure in the long term energy security for the UK. And she set it as her target that by 2040 the UK should be rather than having to rely on imports to heat our homes and keep the lights on. That gets more complicated and unpredictable going into the winter when there are issues around supply of gas from Russia. A hard winter in Europe might mean that we are potentially struggling to get supplies imported. So she wants more energy security for the UK. Of course, that is a decade-plus programme, but that is her aim. And in the short term, support for bills. Labour say it's not enough, as do the Lib Dems.
14, 15. OK, Beth, many thanks. Beth Rigby there live for us in Downing Street. But as Beth was saying, that news, that important, hugely important announcement about the energy support package, the energy price cap, being overshadowed by the news that was announced about 12:30 this afternoon by Buckingham Palace that the Queen is under medical supervision at Balmoral, of course, as Beth was saying, where Liz Truss and Boris Johnson went to visit her 2 days ago. She's under medical supervision there because there are concerns for her health. She is understood, though, to be comfortable. All the senior members of the royal family are either at Balmoral now or are on their way there. Her 4 children and her grandchildren, we understand. Well, Ashish Joshi is here with me at Buckingham Palace at the moment. And Ashish, this is clearly a moment of the utmost significance, the utmost concern.
That was the word used by the Queen's own physicians. It's the first time we've heard her doctors use that sort of language. And the fact that her closest immediate family have been called to her bedside at Balmoral will tell you that the doctors have thought now is the time for them to be there just in case. And this is what it is. We can't speculate on the Queen's health, but what we can do is listen to words of her doctors and look at events as they unfold. Families don't get called to the bedside of someone who doctors have a concern for. But we also understand at the same time that the doctors stress she is comfortable. This is a woman who is 96 years old. As far as we know, and because doctors swear that oath of confidentiality and she is the Queen and the head of state, we aren't privy to her medical records. We have absolutely no idea exactly what is wrong with her. We do know she's a 96-year-old woman who enjoyed, up until perhaps last year, a very full life. That's been scaled back. She's scaled back on her royal duties, the number of people she meets, and her other. But she's kept going in other ways. She continues to enjoy the company of her family. She enjoys the estate. So all of that has continued. The only thing we've seen visibly damaged over the last year is her mobility. That's been impaired, as you might expect with somebody who is 96 years old. Other than that, we know very little about her health. But we do know that now doctors are saying, and they've not used this word before, they're concerned.
But you mentioned duty there, and as she pared down the number of engagements that she took part in, she kept the core ones there right up to last Tuesday.
Yes.
2 days ago, that very important, the transition of power between prime ministers, when she accepted Boris Johnson's resignation and then asked Liz Truss to form her next government.
Yes, and invited them to Balmoral. So she continued with her duties as much as she could, but she took the advice and guidance of her doctors and physicians who told her she needed to scale back. And we saw that, didn't we, in June with the pomp and pageantry surrounding the celebration. I did. I was here, and it was incredible to see this outpouring of affection and the understanding and acceptance from the public that the Queen wanted to make all of those appearances at all of those events, but couldn't. She had to pick and choose. And that's only to be expected for somebody who is of that age. So there is an understanding on the part of the public, and there is also an understanding on the part of the Queen herself that at her age, she has to scale back. She has to do fewer duties than she would possibly like to do. Because she's had a full life. She's been on, for 70 years, every single day for those 70 years as Queen and head of state. And that is a very long and the pressure she must be under all the time. It was time to step back.
And the sadness she must have been feeling since last year when her husband, Prince Philip, passed.
Yes. And again, that was an indication of just how much the Queen means to the British public. It was a tragedy losing her husband, but ultimately it was that picture which is seared in everyone's memory of her alone at church, sitting there without her husband of so many years by her side, a constant companion. And that was another reminder, if one were needed, of just how much the Queen means to all the people in this country. And it's important to understand that it hasn't always been an easy association with the British public, but the Queen is brilliant at re-engaging, re-modernising, refreshing, and making these connections over and over again. And she does that so well. But certainly, you see the people here who are gathering here, she means a great deal to so many people. And that's why you've seen so many expressions, so many outpourings of concern for her on social media, for example, all the politicians and the clergy and heads of state and everyone just wishing her well. And, you know, she's in good hands. She's with her doctors who know her very well, and she's surrounded by family.
With her family, that's the important thing. And as you mentioned, the international interest, the world's press here gathering at Buckingham Palace for the latest on Her Majesty the Queen. Let's go to Balmoral. Our Scotland correspondent James Matthews is there, and as Ashish was saying, we understand that all the senior members of the royal family have either gathered there at Balmoral or are on their way. James, just set the scene for us. Tell us what you know about the movements of the seniors.
There hasn't been much movement at the gates of Balmoral itself, Dermot. They are on their way via Aberdeen Airport, but in terms of this location west of Aberdeen, there hasn't yet been much coming and going. I would expect that to change in time. The first sign today that anyone had an inkling that things aren't great was Prince Charles's non-departure from the Balmoral estate. He was due to attend a public event in Lanarkshire. The helicopter that would have transported him went in, but we understand it didn't leave with him on board. So that was the first sign locally that all was not as it should be. Then, of course, there was that statement from the palace talking about concern for Her Majesty's health. The statement said that she is comfortable. And of course, this is an estate, Balmoral, at which she is extremely comfortable, which she enjoys at this time every year. She is spending summer holiday this year, as she has done throughout her life. And people, you know, who come across her, people who meet her and deal with her, they say that it's where she is happiest. Scotland is part of her soul, they say. People who have seen her recently, in recent days and weeks, they talk about her being in good form. On Tuesday, when she met and appointed Liz Truss as Prime Minister, they met, of course, in the drawing room. I'm told that in the preamble to that meeting, it was in the drawing room, lit by a fire, big drafty room. They were obviously keen to keep it warm for the Queen. She was in good humour, smiled for her press secretary and press photographer who took those pool images that you saw of the Queen on Tuesday. She had a big smile for them, joked about the weather, talked about how dark it was. You'll remember on Tuesday it was bucketing down here. Liz Truss's plane couldn't land for something like 20 minutes because of the conditions. The Queen remarked on that too. The press secretary and photographer, they had a joke about it. She was in good spirits. She was jovial. Waited around 2 or 3 minutes for Liz Truss to arrive. Had a big smile for the incoming Prime Minister, and thereafter she sat back down. She was using a stick that day, but we've seen the pictures. She was all smiles. And again, people who were there and who met her in person said that she was in jovial mood. But clearly her condition has changed since then, and we have this statement from the palace that there is concern for her health, but that she is comfortable behind the gates of the Balmoral estate.
James Matthews in Balmoral, thank you.
Well, we're joined now by the broadcaster and royal commentator Wesley Kerr for reaction to today's breaking news. And just to remind people who are just joining us, Wesley, there was a statement released earlier on today saying, following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. What was your reaction to that statement?
It's a deeply concerning statement. It happens. I was with some friends when I saw that, and one of them actually burst into tears when we saw that statement. So obviously, something has happened in the last couple of days, which has concerned the doctors, and she has excellent medical team, Her Majesty. Some up there, some down here. I think this is a concerning situation. But I suppose it's good not to speculate in detail about what's happening. She may be our revered head of state, but it's a human being. Her family gathered, her family concerned. So in some ways today, words are superfluous. it's a day for thoughts and indeed for prayers, that whatever happens is peaceful, that this amazing journey that we've been on with this remarkable woman born in 1926, the pledge she made when she was 21 to devote her whole life to our service. My goodness, she's fulfilled that pledge. I hope there'll be some more years, but it's a very worrying situation at the moment, and I know that there'll be thoughts and worry really across the world today, across this country and across the Commonwealth.
Wesley, a number of times there you mentioned a key word that was in that statement from the Palace this morning: concern. And given what we know about Buckingham Palace and how they communicate the Queen's health to the public, that is not a word we've seen before. So explain to us the significance of this statement. And as you said, we should not speculate, but people are watching and waiting to find out what happens. It does feel, because of that word and that statement, that this is a significant moment.
And indeed by the fact that members of the family are converging on Balmoral, which is rather reminiscent of what happened at Sandringham, I'm afraid, in January 1936, towards the end of the life of Her Majesty's beloved grandfather, George V. So obviously there has been a serious medical incident, I would have thought, but the fact that the statement is from doctors speaks of concern. The family are converging, but
Wesley,
I think
I just want to explain to our viewers, I don't know if you can see the pictures that they can, but this is a plane coming in to land at Aberdeen Airport. It's from RAF Northolt. We understand that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, are on board that plane. They were due to attend the Well Child Awards in London tonight, but they have had to pull out of that event and have headed straight up to Balmoral. They've just landed there at Aberdeen Airport. We understand those are the two senior royals on board that will then get in a car to go to Balmoral. Please pick up on what you were saying, Wesley, just so I can explain to the viewers what they're watching.
I was at that airport the day that Princess Diana died, so I've got very powerful memories of that airport when Prince Charles went by plane to Paris. So it's some way from Balmoral. That's one reason why it would have been inconceivable for the Queen to come to London earlier in the week to invite the new Prime Minister to take office. So I think there are going to be emotional scenes at Balmoral, and I think the family will be hoping and praying that for good news, and the doctors will be doing their best. But this undoubtedly is a significant and worrying series of developments. But it is just remarkable to see these pictures, how active Her Majesty has been this year, considering all the health concerns. That this is in Scotland in the summer. She was determined to be there for Holyrood Week, the traditional week of ceremonial. I saw her at the Chelsea Flower Show, those pictures of her in the buggy, and it was a very, very happy visit for her. So although she was in the buggy, she walked to the buggy unaided. She was particularly pleased that day to be given a bouquet of roses, which were named after her beloved husband, Prince Philip, and she took those with her in the car. So, but that was a very happy day. Because she was in a buggy, she was quite comfortable and relaxed, not worried about mobility. And she spoke to lots of people that she'd known over the years. I mean, so just to take that event, that's an event she's been attending since 1947. So Her Majesty is such a fixture in all our lives. I do pray for positive news. But what an amazing one! What an incredible life that she has given to us, a life of service and duty. And I hope it continues.
Yes, many people watching will echo those thoughts. Wesley Kerr, thank you very much. Just to explain what you're watching there, these are live pictures from Aberdeen Airport. An aircraft has just landed from RAF Northolt. We understand that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are on board. They are making their way to Balmoral to see the Queen. The Queen's four children, Charles, the Princess Royal, the Duke of York and the Earl of Wessex, we understand, are either with the Queen or on their way. They will be joined by the Duchess of Cornwall and the Countess of Wessex. And we understand that the Duke of Cambridge is on his way as well.
Well, joining me now is the historian and author, Sir Anthony Selden. Very good to talk to you, Sir Anthony. Now, any statement about the health of the monarch is pretty rare, and the fact that this statement contains the word concern is very worrying.
Well, it is, isn't it? Because the palace is very cautious and wouldn't be using that kind of language if indeed they weren't worried themselves. So it is very concerning and it's unusual, as is the mass movement of the children, the grandchildren, up to Balmoral. Whatever it's about, it's not good news.
I'm just going to pause there. Do stay with us, Sir Anthony. We're just looking at those live pictures from Aberdeen Airport. As we've seen an aircraft landing, we of course know that the senior members of the royal family are travelling up to Balmoral to see Her Majesty. We thought initially that perhaps Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, may have been on board the aircraft. They've now been informed that it does contain Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, and also the Countess of Wessex, Sophie, and Prince Edward. So William, Edward and Sophie, we understand, to be on board that aircraft then will be making their way. It's a bit further to travel to the royal residence at Balmoral to be with Her Majesty the Queen. And just as we are, of course, Sir Anthony, in the platinum year of the second Elizabethan age, I mean, it really is such an important moment.
It's a moment that is absolutely massive. Prime ministers come and go. They're here today, they're gone tomorrow. There have been 15 who've served under the life so far of Her Majesty. And it reminds us that the head of state is the permanent feature of the British Constitution, who holds the country together. And the Prime Minister, the mere head of government, who we lavish so much attention on, that they do come and go. The monarch is the permanent figure, none more so in British history than Elizabeth II. No one knew when she came to the throne in 1952, succeeding her father, George VI, that it would be anything like such a long monarchy. That was unseen. The previous queens, Elizabeth I and Queen Victoria, served long periods themselves, but nothing like as long as Queen Elizabeth II. So utterly defining, and very rare to find someone who has a memory of George VI, her father, as the monarch.
And it is strange you mentioning that point, illustrating just how ephemeral, in contrast, I suppose, that the political careers of our prime ministers are compared to the reign of our monarch. That change, that here today, gone tomorrow, as you put it, nature of prime ministers, happened just 2 days ago in Balmoral. We were all watching similar shots at Aberdeen Airport, carrying one prime minister in and another one out.
And looks like the same planes, doesn't it? Yes, I mean, isn't that an interesting reminder of the fact that we are a monarchy, we're not a republic in Britain, and the mere fact that the new Prime Minister, on her first day, made that 1,000-mile round trip underlines the importance of the monarchy, of the way that Britain runs its constitution, and it was extraordinarily significant. But it's also very important that she has kept bouncing back. When Queen Victoria lost her husband, Albert, Prince Albert, in the middle of the 19th century, she went for many years into mourning and retired. The monarchy became very unpopular. Whereas the Queen, who lost, as we were hearing, again being reminded of the loss of her own husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, showed extraordinary fortitude and fidelity to her promise that she would always serve. And she has come back and she's had a very busy year since.
Sir Anthony, thank you very much indeed. Sir Anthony Selden there, the historian and author. As we watch pictures live from Aberdeen Airport, as you will no doubt be aware now, senior members of the royal family are flying up there, flying in. Many of them have been in London. And I think we just saw disembarking, coming down the steps from the aircraft, the Duke of Cambridge. Prince William, also understood to be on board that aircraft, are the Earl and Countess of Wessex, Edward and Sophie. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, joins me now live, and we can see then the gathering of the senior royals. Still a way to go, though, to get to Balmoral, Rhiannon.
That's right. So just to confirm, a couple of moments ago, we first of all saw some close protection officers leaving that plane, closely followed by the Duke of Cambridge, who took a bit of time to pause and speak to a woman who was wearing a high-vis jacket, ready to welcome them. And then we saw the Earl and Countess of Wessex get off the plane, and followed by Prince Andrew. And now we can see those Range Rovers heading off towards Balmoral, a journey that I took the other day, that actually the outgoing and incoming Prime Ministers took the other day. It's around 40 miles, 50 miles between the airport and Balmoral Castle. I have to say they are just single, single lane roads, so it can take a bit of time to make that journey, especially if you get stuck behind farm vehicles or caravans, as is often the case as you're heading through Royal Deeside and into the Highlands. So as you can see, this has been quite a long journey for them. We heard at around 1 o'clock that members of the royal family were heading up to Scotland. So they've obviously had that flight to Aberdeen, and now they will be transferred by car. Obviously, they would have been able to get there quicker if they were using helicopters, but the weather, as was the same on Tuesday, is looking a little bit temperamental. And so obviously they've decided that the best way to get them there as quickly as possible is to take them by road. But I think the fact that we are seeing members of the family gathering undoubtedly is one of the reasons why this announcement from Buckingham Palace has understandably caused alarm and concern. And also, it has to be said, a great deal of speculation. And I think the palace will be very, very conscious of that, which is why in some ways it's unusual that they've given us this much information so far. So the fact that at 12:30 they decided to release that statement in which they said that following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended that she remain under medical supervision. And then subsequently telling us that, yes, family members have been informed and family members are on their way. They know that will have worried people. And now the problem for them in some ways is the vacuum, as we all now fill time, as it were, as we all now hope that the Queen is okay. And also, of course, they're not going to share every detail of what the medical practitioners are concerned about. But I think it is worth reminding ourselves that actually it was only on Tuesday that we saw the Queen, again, front and centre, carrying out that key constitutional role. Then, on Tuesday, our eyes were trained on Aberdeen Airport, as you had one Prime Minister coming in, followed by successor, and then heading to Balmoral to meet the Queen. I've said this quite a few times already since that announcement was made, just over 4 hours ago now, about the Queen's health. And these pictures remind me of the fact that that was only 12 months ago. And there has been this shift and this change in terms of the Queen's mobility, in terms of her health, and in terms of what she's been able to do. But in essence, over that 12 months, we've also seen her family really rally round her. And it was actually in Jordan, what was it, back in November last year, the Queen hadn't attended the Remembrance Day service on the Sunday. Prince of Wales was in Jordan the following week, and I said to him, I said, how is the Queen? How is she doing? People are understandably concerned. And the Prince of Wales, it has to be said slightly reluctantly, answered the question, but said to me, things get more difficult when you're 95. It's hard enough when you're 73. And I think there's been this appreciation from the family that they have had to step up when the Queen wants, and they have been more than happy to do so. And now we see them gathering with her at Balmoral, a place where no doubt they all have such wonderful memories of spending time with their mother and grandmother.
Rhiannon, many thanks. Rhiannon Mills, our royal correspondent there, as we see that aircraft on the tarmac at Aberdeen. For those of you just joining us, this is Sky News. We are live at Buckingham Palace. And in the past few hours, it has been confirmed that Her Majesty the Queen is under medical supervision after her doctors became concerned about her health. All of the Queen's children are now at her side or on their way to Balmoral. Prince Charles was seen leaving Dumfries House in Ayrshire to travel to Aberdeenshire. And the Queen's grandchildren are also gathering by her bedside. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are also on their way after cancelling an engagement in London this evening. And in the past few minutes, as you were just seeing, an aircraft landed at Aberdeen Airport carrying the Duke of Cambridge and the Earl and Countess of Wessex. Other members of the royal family were either already at Balmoral or have arrived by different means. Now, in a statement, Buckingham Palace said, and this was released just around about lunchtime, following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended that she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. Well, the Prime Minister was notified in the House of Commons as she was making a very important statement about the cost of living rescue plan, about the energy price cap. Well, the House of Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, gave this statement.
I know I speak on behalf of the entire House when I say that we send our best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen and that she and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at this moment.
Well, Liz Truss, the Prime Minister, then tweeted this message. She said, the whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. It continued, my thoughts and the thoughts of people across our United Kingdom are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time. There was also a message on Twitter from the Archbishop of Canterbury. He said, my prayers and the prayers of people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen today. The message continued, may God's presence strengthen and comfort Her Majesty, her family, and those who are caring for her at Balmoral. Well, let's go live to Balmoral now and talk to our Scotland correspondent there. James Matthews is there. And James, what is the latest?
Well, we're expecting arrivals, Dermot. There is much coming and going at Aberdeen Airport, clearly, as the Royals head towards the Balmoral estate behind me. So far, we know that Prince Charles is on the estate, but the others we expect to arrive in due course, either by helicopter or by road. It's a well-travelled route from Aberdeen Airport along the A93 west towards the Balmoral estate, a place where the Queen comes at this time every year. And it's interesting that Harry and Meghan are due to arrive. That, of course, was not on their schedule to begin with. They were due to attend an awards ceremony in London this evening as part of their mini European tour. They had been invited, it was reported, several weeks ago to attend a big sleepover which is held on the estate. The Queen issues this invitation to grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Also, they had been invited to spend time here with Prince Charles, but that wasn't on the cards until the news broke earlier this morning. So clearly, in these circumstances, perhaps soap opera is taking second place. But we're expecting arrivals here. The Queen is said to be comfortable despite this concern for her medical condition. She was in good spirits on Tuesday. I know from those who were in her company that when she met Liz Truss, she was in fairly jovial mood. She had a smile for her press secretary and photographer who took those pictures that you saw, those stills on Tuesday of the incoming Prime Minister. She commented about the weather. It's bucketing down here in Balmoral right now. It was bucketing down there, and she commented on the dark skies over Aberdeenshire. So she was in good form on Tuesday. She has been out and about in recent weeks. She has been seen picnicking with her lady-in-waiting at Glenmick, one of her favoured spots. She has a cottage called Inchnabobbert at Glenmick. She's been seen there having a spot of lunch. She's been seen walking the corgis as well on the Balmoral estate, also lunching and picnicking at her mother's old fishing hut on the banks of the Dee. So she has been active, out and about with the corgis, with and without a stick. And those who saw the Queen in recent weeks told me that she actually looked happier, healthier than she had done perhaps a couple of weeks ago. So, notwithstanding events over the past 24, 36 hours. So there is concern, clearly. And Nicola Sturgeon's First Minister, she's added her thoughts, tweeting that she was profoundly concerned for Her Majesty's condition. But as is stressed in that statement, she is said to be comfortable in a part of the world that she enjoys. This is the annual summer holiday fixture. And, the Queen, they make the point here, those around the Queen, that this is the place in which she sleeps the longest, continually anywhere, that 2 to 3 months on the Balmoral estate. And it's always a matter of regret for her when she has to leave, actually, because of the time of year. The leaves are turning. It's a beautiful time of year in this very picturesque part of the world. And there was a couple of years ago that I'm told the engine was running. She was about to make the trip back down south. The cases were packed. She was gazing out the window with a look of regret at what she was leaving behind, and commented to somebody in close proximity that, I'll have to stay here a bit longer next time. So it's a place she loves, a place where she is very comfortable generally every time she comes here. But clearly, right now, there's concern. Her children, grandchildren are on their way to be in the company of the Queen. We would expect these arrivals at some point over the next half hour to an hour and possibly into the evening.
And just to say, we're hearing from Downing Street from the Prime Minister's spokesperson that Liz Truss has no plans to travel to Scotland today or tomorrow. James Matthews, thank you.
Well, we are now by the royal broadcaster and photographer Helena Chard to react to what is unfolding this afternoon. Just to remind people who may be tuning in, a spokesperson for the Palace today said that following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. The Queen's close family have been informed, many of them arriving in Scotland to be with her. The Duke of Cambridge just landing at Aberdeen Airport a few moments ago. Can you tell me how you reacted when you heard this statement, because it's being seen as very significant?
Hello?
Helena, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. I'm here, yes.
Yeah, Helena, I'm sorry. I'm afraid we've got a few problems with the line here, but I'll just ask you your reaction to the statement that was released by Buckingham Palace earlier on today.
Thank you. It's so good to join you. To begin with, my thoughts are with Her Majesty the Queen and obviously her family at this time. I think many other people, my colleagues, and broadcasters, we're shocked. Everyone has heavy hearts. But I think something deep in me is it was a reminder to really to remember the joy and the courage that she's given the nation. And and she's given an enormous amount of strength to everyone. And I think what she's given is huge, and that is why it will affect a lot of people, not just here, the Commonwealth, but also internationally, because there's a great love.
We understand that from the Reuters news agency that Prince Andrew, Prince Edward have arrived in Scotland as well. As I said, we've just seen the Duke of Cambridge. We understand the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, who were due to be in London at an award ceremony, have cancelled that to head up to Balmoral. Can you just talk me through the significance of what we're seeing unfold?
It's a huge, I mean, this is huge for everybody at the moment. I'm speaking with you, it's great, but I have to say, I do hear people in the background, which is my foreground at the moment. So apologies if I'm not answering what you've asked me. I mean, this is hugely significant at the moment. Hugely significant. The fact that we have, I do apologise, but there's lots of people talking with me.
Okay. I'm afraid our communication lines just aren't great at the moment, so we'll leave it. What we'll do is we'll try and sort them out and come back to you a little later on this afternoon. Apologies, royal broadcaster and photographer there, Helena Chard. Just to remind you, if you're just joining us, of what you're watching unfold this afternoon, we are keeping a close eye on events at Balmoral today. Royal family members gathering there to see the Queen, who is under medical supervision this afternoon. A statement was released by Buckingham Palace earlier saying, following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. The Queen, of course, at Balmoral for her annual summer break. She is on holiday there. We saw her just on Tuesday with the outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the new Prime Minister Liz Truss. She officially gave Liz Truss an invitation to form a government, and we had that official picture of the Queen with the new Prime Minister. That is the last we have seen of the Queen in public. I'm going to hand over to Dermot Murnaghan now. He has the latest from Buckingham Palace. OK, Sarah Jane, many thanks for that. Yes, here at Buckingham Palace, the world's press are gathering for any news that emerges about Her Majesty's health. I want to go to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. He's in the central lobby at the Houses of Parliament. And Sam, of course, on today, politicians should have been digesting that energy support plan unveiled by Liz Truss and her government this afternoon. Of course, that was interrupted. We saw in the House of Commons itself as the news spread, and that now everyone, all the politicians are digesting the situation with the Queen's health.
That's right, Dermot. It was about 20 minutes into Liz Truss's statement to the House of Commons, her first big statement as Prime Minister, the biggest policy she might ever announce, just 48 hours after the Queen made her Prime Minister, that we got some indication that frankly, something was up. Nadine Zahawi, a Cabinet Office Minister, was seen conferring with her in her place at the dispatch box. A few moments later, Keir Starmer was handed a piece of paper by Angela Rayner, his deputy, suggesting that something was up. He then left the chamber, came back wearing a more sombre tie. And it was moments after that that the Speaker of the House of Commons issued a statement alerting MPs to what was going on. He talked about how the whole House's thoughts and prayers were with the royal family. Liz Truss, as you were saying earlier, has sent a message wishing the Queen well. Other party leaders have also sent their wishes. Keir Starmer said, along with the rest of the country, I'm deeply worried by the news from Buckingham Palace this afternoon. My thoughts are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time, and I join everyone across the United Kingdom in hoping for her recovery. Nicola Sturgeon says, all of us are feeling profoundly concerned at the reports of Her Majesty's health. My thoughts and wishes are with the Queen and all of the royal family at this time. And Ed Davey, who's the Liberal Democrat leader, the whole nation's thoughts and prayers are with Her Majesty, the Queen and her family, as we all hope and pray for her full recovery. Liz Truss, now the 15th Prime Minister that Her Majesty the Queen has seen the first Winston Churchill really just 2 days into the job of Prime Minister after going up to Balmoral to see the Queen, to kiss the hands and take on the job at this critical moment for the country, now facing more questions about how she's going to deal with her energy supply, but other issues, I think, on MPs' minds. The mood here in the House of Commons and across the Houses of Parliament is sombre and fretful. We are waiting for more news here, MPs finding out what's going on.
And Sam, just to confirm, we understand the Prime Minister, from her spokesperson, has no plans to travel to Scotland.
That's right. I think Liz Truss at the moment staying put here. She has an incredibly packed political agenda for now. We await further news, at which point things may change, but if that news comes, but we will wait and see what happens. Liz Truss, for now, keeping her plans much in place. This would have been one of the biggest days of her premiership. Now, of course, other things on MPs' minds as we wait to find out what's going on from Buckingham Palace.
OK, Sam, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Correspondent, Deputy Political Editor in the House of Commons there. Let's talk now to Stephen Bates, The Guardian's former royal correspondent. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Bates. Tell us in your reaction to the statement, which is all we've really got to go on, issued just after 12 o'clock today by Buckingham Palace, that doctors are concerned about Her Majesty's health. She's under medical supervision, but she remains comfortable, and added in the facts that senior members of the royal family, her immediate family, her grandchildren and their partners are travelling to Balmoral.
Yes, well, there are two parts to that, aren't there? The first is the concern of the doctors. It sounds very much as if it's more than a mobility issue, which is what they've been saying over recent months. And it's also significant, I think, that the royal family is gathering at Balmoral. They don't normally gather around a bedside under normal circumstances. They stoically get on with their own duties and jobs. So I think there's obviously a deep level of concern about the Queen's health, and it's entirely worrying, and coming at a time of political turmoil, all the more difficult, I suspect, not only for the palace but also for the government.
Yeah, and just on the health side of the equation, in recent days and weeks, while at Balmoral, we know Her Majesty cancelled an attendance at the Highland Games that she loves so much, and of course yesterday, a meeting of the Privy Council.
Yes, and that was a significant thing as well. She doesn't like to cancel significant events in her diary. And so maybe that was an early warning that her health was in more difficulty than expected.
And in terms of political turmoil, of course, the most recent picture we saw of Her Majesty was playing her constitutional role, that all-important handover of power between prime ministers, accepting Boris Johnson's resignation and asking Liz Truss to form her next administration.
Yes, it's something she's done frequently in the past, increasingly frequently over the last few years. She knows all about the constitutional priorities and proprieties. Liz Truss being her 15th Prime Minister, Truss born in 1975, her first Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, born in 1874. So 100 years difference, quite a spread. And quite a spread, of course, because of the longevity of her reign.
And what longevity and activity. And it has been said, it's been said for many years now, hasn't it? And especially as Her Majesty went into her 90s, that would she ever consider stepping aside, as we've seen in so many other countries, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Spain. We've seen it with popes, that as they age, they step aside, but the Queen took that duty so very seriously.
Yes, it's abdication, I think, has not crossed her mind. They've tried it once, the royal family, and it didn't agree with them. Yes, as she said on her 21st birthday, however long her life was going to be, it was going to be a life of service. And while she could keep going, even into her mid-90s, she was determined to keep on doing it, still going through the red boxes every day, still meeting a range of people, admittedly cutting back on official duties and public appearances, but still out and about, still meeting people, as you can see there, and apparently really enjoying herself up in her favourite place up in Scotland.
And still, as you say, when we talk about her engagement with the issues of the day, still on Tuesday, we understand having a conversation with Liz Truss about the difficulties that the government and the country is facing.
Well, yes, she knows better than anyone what the political situation is, and she's seen more political crises come and go than most politicians have had hot dinners. And I assume that she didn't rehearse the famous or infamous speech of Liz Truss when she was a Liberal Democrat calling for the end of the monarchy. She certainly changed her mind about that, the Prime Minister.
Well, I'm sure Her Majesty's met a few people like that, particularly when they accepted their honours. Stephen Bates, thank you very much indeed, former royal correspondent with The Guardian.
Oh, well, we continue to watch events at Balmoral. The Queen's former Scottish Communications Secretary joins me now, Louise Tate. Louise, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon here on Sky News. The statement we received from Buckingham Palace earlier on today, concerning, to use a word that was in that statement, but also quite surprising, given we saw the Queen just on Tuesday receiving the new Prime Minister.
Yes, I think that that was something that was very clear that the Queen was very determined to go ahead with, as is characteristic of her. But I think that when the announcement was made about the Privy Council, then that would inevitably raise, people would be concerned that that was not usual for her. And perhaps that's why they felt the need to just clarify the situation regarding the present state of Her Majesty's health.
Louise, you'll know better than anyone as a former communications director for the Queen, just how important words are and just how rare announcements are about the Queen's health. Can you talk us through what you think is the significance of this statement from Buckingham Palace today?
Well, Buckingham Palace have always said that they would never, and it has been proven, never give a running commentary on matters of health. And we saw that when the Duke of Edinburgh was on, but they necessarily feel that there is a duty of being honest and just about the situation. And I think it is significant because it's not something we're used to seeing from Buckingham Palace. But clearly they felt it was necessary, and probably I think it was the right thing to do, given that we've got these significant family movements, and without clarifying the situation, it been led to speculation, especially when family were not appearing at events that they were scheduled to be at in attendance.
Yeah, Buckingham Palace will not give a running commentary, and there is now this void period, isn't there, from the statement going out. We are now keeping an eye on the gates of Balmoral. We know that the Duke of Cambridge is on his way. We saw him land at Aberdeen Airport. We understand that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are on their way as well. Can you give us an idea of the kind of coordination that will be going into getting all the senior royals in one place to see the Queen this afternoon?
Well, they all have diaries, busy diaries. They've all got commitments. They are, possibly, some of them, I'm not sure, but it could have been out of the country, for instance. So that doesn't seem to be the case this time. And it's important that, as you might imagine, for any family member who's ill, that family tries to gather. But there are logistical challenges, and things have to be rearranged and hastily rearranged. But clearly, that's a priority to do that, and they seems to be managed to accomplish that. And it's helpful that the Prince of Wales, or the Duke of Rothesay, as he's known in Scotland, was already at Burke Hall, it would seem. So there are some logistical challenges, but they can easily be overcome. There is the challenge of the weather, as we know. Helicopters are difficult often, so they'll be finding the best and most efficient way to get people where they need to be around Her Majesty at Balmoral.
We are, of course, talking about the Queen, but we're also talking about a mother and a grandmother, and they are the royal family, but they are a family. So looking at what is happening, people fear the worst but hope for the best. When a loved one is ill, particularly an elderly relative, you will want to be with that relative. The royal family, in that regard, no different to any other.
No different to any other, I would say. It's entirely reasonable that these are given the message of concern that you would want to be with your loved one at this time, and that's clearly what they've cleared their diaries and made possible this afternoon.
Nobody wants to overreact and nobody wants to speculate. So let's just talk about Balmoral and why the Queen is there. She goes there every summer. Can you talk to us about the significance of Balmoral to the Queen?
You broke up a little bit there, but yeah, I think you're asking about how important Balmoral is to Her Majesty. I think it's important to many members of the royal family. The Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, or the Duke and Duchess of Brossley, as he should be known in Scotland, they spend a lot of time at Birkhall. Someone once said to me that they consider it their marital home. So it is somewhere that is dear to the heart of Her Majesty. We heard James Matthews talking just before there about it's one of our favourite places, and it is such a beautiful, beautiful place, and it changes with the seasons. No 2 days are ever the same, and it's a lovely family place. It really is, and you know, it's. Having been there so often myself, I've seen just how relaxed members of the family are when they're there.
And with that in mind, and the family gathering there today, the Queen is there because it is her summer break. There were thoughts that she would travel to Buckingham Palace to invite the new Prime Minister to form a government in Liz Truss, but it was decided that she would stay at Balmoral for what we told were reasons of mobility. We take the palace at its word, but we do wonder what may have been going on behind the scenes. As you said, the palace will not give a running commentary, and it's reasonable to assume that perhaps things may have been going on with the Queen's health that she did not want in the public domain. Is that a reasonable thing to assume?
Well, you know, the continuity of monarchy and government are two things that are clearly very important to this country, and both Her Majesty and the Prime Minister, both Prime Ministers, fulfil their constitutional roles. To me, the place was not as important as the people and the offices, but yeah, you could perhaps there were some indications that that her health was not quite as robust as we might have thought. But it is speculation. Somebody was going to have to move one way or the other. Somebody was either going to have to come to London, or London was going to have to come to Balmoral. And I think it was common sense to me, really. It was.
And of course, she is the Queen. If you're invited up to Balmoral, I cannot imagine an outgoing Prime Minister or an incoming one refusing that invitation from the Queen. Just a final question while I have you, if I may, Louise Tate, former Scottish Communications Secretary for the Queen. In the statement released by Buckingham Palace earlier today, it says the Queen remains comfortable at Balmoral and is under medical supervision. With regard to the Queen's health, does she have the same medical team that will travel with her around the country, or does she have a specific team in Scotland and another one in London? I'm just trying to get an idea of what level of care is at the Queen's disposal.
Well, as you might imagine, there is a medical household. I don't think that's giving away any secrets. And there are people locally that applies to Sandringham, London, Windsor, Edinburgh, Holyrood, and in Aberdeenshire. So there will be a team of people who she's familiar with, and that's perfectly normal. That's perfectly usual, and that is not a new thing at all.
Louise Tate, we really appreciate your time this afternoon reacting to the news that the Queen is under medical supervision at Balmoral. As you've reiterated, it's important not to speculate and overreact. But as someone who knew the Queen well, we really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah Jane. Well, as Sarah Jane was saying, that statement released by Buckingham Palace at about 12:30 today grabbed not just the attention of everyone here in the United Kingdom. We saw what happened in the House of Commons while Liz Truss was making a statement. The new Prime Minister was making about supporting people through the energy crisis. You could see the reaction on politicians' faces, but there's been international reaction as well. The eyes of the world now are on Balmoral and, of course, Buckingham Palace. Dominic Waghorn, diplomatic editor, is here with me now. And as I say, as we just even look around us here, Dominic, the attention of the world is now focused on Buckingham Palace, on Balmoral, waiting for news.
Yeah, not just British news crews, but a lot of foreign media here as well, Italians and others waiting here. One Italian journalist asking me for advice about where she should go in the British Isles during this extraordinary day. And a lot of tourists, of course, gathering amongst British people, waiting outside the palace for news. I was just at the Italian embassy, where the outgoing Italian ambassador, Raffaele Trombetta, was giving a lunch to diplomatic correspondents as he leaves the country at the end of his term in office. And he gave a toast to the health of the Queen. And he admitted this is unusual for a foreign diplomat to do so. Obviously, British diplomats do that all the time, but for a foreign diplomat, an ambassador, to do so, I think, reflects his concern and the concern of many others who'll be watching this, because, of course, the Queen deeply loved, revered around the world by not just British people, not just in the Commonwealth, but particularly, I think, by diplomats and world leaders and politicians who she has advised and been wise counsel to over the years. She's met or spent time with 13 out of 14 of the presidents in her 96 years on this planet, and a lot of them have said how useful she's been, the advice she has given them, and I think they will all be watching closely, as we all are, to hear what news may come later today and a further update on the Queen's health. And we've been used, obviously, to concerns about her health. We've been used to her cancelling her attendance at events. Obviously, back in June, she was on the balcony over there for the first day of her Platinum Jubilee weekend celebrations, and the next day obviously then had to cancel her attendance, or felt she, I think under medical advice, felt she wasn't up to going to St Paul's Cathedral to attend the Thanksgiving, the Jubilee Thanksgiving service. So we've been used to these sort of periodic bouts of concern, but I think we're on a different level, I think, with this, with the fact that her doctors are concerned is what is causing concern amongst so many of us.
And Dominic, you talk of the international admiration for Her Majesty because of her knowledge, her longevity, the advice you mentioned that she's given so many world leaders. She's seen them come and go. She's seen heads of state come and go, particularly when we mention countries like Italy. And that admiration international is about the role, isn't it, as well, about the symbolism, the steadiness, the stability that she offered to the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, constitutionally, she is that source of stability and continuity for the British because she is an unelected head of state. We have the advantage constitutionally of having just one head of state who has the job for life, and therefore the dirty work of politics is left to the politicians in a smaller house down the road in Downing Street. And that's been the way for centuries now. And I think other countries have looked at that with some envy. And others obviously feel that they have a better way of running things. But the great strength to the British Constitution is that you have this head of state who's above the fray, above the political fray, if she's able to remain so. And obviously the Queen has been expert at doing that for decades. And so that's given her a sense of being a source of strength and stability and continuity. But that's also given her an extraordinarily long period of time in which she's been able to observe politicians here, but also then use that experience to advise politicians elsewhere. So many American politicians, presidents have said that her advice has been invaluable. Her wisdom drawn from those decades of watching politicians closely, advising them in her weekly audiences with prime ministers and the rest of it. That's given her something that is invaluable to presidents that come and go. Those years of wisdom have made her invaluable in terms of the advice she's been able to give them.
I suppose the other main international role she's been playing is, of course, as head of the Commonwealth. And she is the monarch who oversaw the transition from empire to Commonwealth.
She did, and in 1947 in South Africa, I don't think many viewers will remember this, it's going back a long way, but she gave this speech on her 21st birthday when she was in South Africa. She'd been there part of a 3-month tour with her parents, and on the occasion of her 21st birthday, it was decided she should give a speech, an address to the entire empire. And in that speech, she talked about how her life would be devoted to the service and the duty of service to the entire great imperial family, as she put it, to which we all belong. That imperial family then, as you say, became a commonwealth. But that commitment to the imperial family, to those millions of people around the world, I think underlined that even at the age of 21, she saw her job that she didn't know was going to be hers, but she saw her role as princess as not just to her subjects or the subjects of her father at the time on the British Isles, but to subjects across the British Empire as it was then and their Commonwealth now. And she has kept true to that pledge throughout her reign. And that's what has made her such a globe-trotting global celebrity. You know, she invented the idea of a sort of global figure going out and bringing all the pomp and bling and the majesty of her office to so many people. And we have to remember, you know, she was the first to do that. We've seen popes do it, we've seen presidents do it since, we've seen Hollywood superstars do it, but she invented that kind of idea of travelling the world and globe-trotting, and for that I think she has been hugely celebrated.
And it's hard to believe, isn't it, when you talk about the number of presidents, the number of prime ministers that she's given advice to and learnt from. When we go back to the start of her reign, she was dealing with the titans, with someone in her 20s. She was dealing with, Eisenhower and Winston Churchill.
Yeah. She's met all the American presidents, apart from Lyndon B. Johnson, so all of them, going back to Eisenhower. As you say, and Winston Churchill took her under his wing and was kind of a mentor to her, and saw that's a huge part of his job, to look after this young princess and bring her through and advise her on affairs of state. She was so young when she became queen, and before that as well as princess. And yeah, she was able to observe and learn from these great global figures, these as you say, titans of global politics. And that gave her, I think, huge counsel and wisdom to draw on in the years to come. And that's why she's so revered globally, because of that, and also because she's been queen for so long. She's been this extraordinary figure of stability and continuity. And that's why we're all looking on so intently and with such concern. And also why it's a very difficult job for the palace courtiers and the doctors to keep us informed and to not create a kind of void of information, but tell us enough so that we're not overly concerned, tell us what's going on accurately. So I think we have to sort of bear that in mind. It's a tough day for them as they work out what's going to happen next.
Dominic, thanks very much.
I just want to bring you a bit of breaking news. We understand that senior royals are either at Balmoral with the Queen or heading there. The Duke of Sussex is, we understand, heading to Balmoral, but sources are telling Sky News he is making this trip by himself. The Duchess of Sussex is not travelling to Balmoral to see the Queen. Sky News sources telling us that Prince Harry is making the trip alone. It's understood Meghan will remain in London but will not be attending the Well Child Awards. These are awards supporting the Well Child charity that the Duke of Sussex is a patron of. They are due to take place in London tonight, but neither the Duke or Duchess will be in attendance. The Duchess, we understand, could potentially join Prince Harry in Scotland at a later date following this change of plan. But as it stands at the moment, the Duke of Sussex is travelling to Balmoral alone to see the Queen. We saw his brother, the Duke of Cambridge, arrive at Aberdeen Airport a little while ago. He is in a car heading to the gates that you see on your screen right now. We will keep across the arrivals of the senior members of the royal family as they happen here on Sky News, all of them gathering around the Queen as her doctors say they are concerned about her health. Well, joining me now is the historian and author Sir Anthony Selden. Sir Anthony, I just want to get a sense of how you're feeling about the news we're watching unfold this afternoon, the significance of it, the weight of it.
Well, I think, like most people in the country, a sense of anxiety, a sense of not knowing what are we to make of it. How ill is she? What could have happened? She looked in good form when she was with Liz Truss, the incoming Prime Minister. So a sense of bewilderment, but also a sense of impending anxiety and foreboding. If it doesn't happen now, she is 96, she can't live ever, and it will be the most profound moment in my living memory. She's been my queen all my life, and that will be true of the great majority of people in the country. She's such a presence that we almost overlook her. 15 prime ministers have come and gone, but there's only been one monarch. She's always there. She's there at the moments, like most recently COVID, when the country is deeply perturbed, and she manages to find the words, harking back to the Second World War, that provide some consolation. She is the comforter in chief of the nation, but she's also the binder in chief of the nation. She is the person who holds the different nations of the United Kingdom together and all parts of the country. And she, of course, talks to us beyond political parties. She has, as we've just been hearing, no political affiliation at all, and therefore she's able to speak to people who are of all different political persuasions and none, because she can truly speak for every person in the entire country, whatever age, whatever background, whatever social, economic class. She is there for all of us, and we will miss her deeply on a personal and a national level when she goes. It will also change Britain's standing in the world.
So many people will be tuning in to Sky News, watching and waiting. I think you described it perfectly there, with a sense of anxiety, because, as you said, the Queen has always been there for the majority of the country. 70 years of service, she has always been there. So it feels like if anything were to happen to the Queen, it would be a real shift in this country at a time when the country is struggling in such uncertain times. I think this is why people are feeling it so keenly today, Sir Anthony Seldon, and really just watching Balmoral for further news.
Yes, I think that is right. I mean, there was never going to be an ideal moment for her to be seriously ill, if indeed she is, as appears to be the case, in a worrying condition. There's always trouble in the nation in one corner or another, but this is obviously with the cost of living, the fuel, inflation, NHS, the war in Ukraine and more, and the prospect of COVID coming back with a new variant. She is a comfort. She's the nation's granny. She's somebody who we all have at the back of our minds, who is a constant. She goes on, and come rain and sunshine, night and day, autumn and summer, she's always there. And in a sense, we've taken it so much for granted. And if and when she is plucked away, it will be emotionally and psychologically very significant for all the people in the nation who care for her. And that is, as polls would show, vast numbers. So on every level, personal, psychological, as well as political and diplomatic, international, this will be one of the great moments. Whatever else happens in the 21st century, this will be one of the defining moments of the 21st century.
Sir Anthony Seldon, thank you so much for speaking to us here on Sky News. I know you're going to stay with us for a little while longer as we watch those gates of Balmoral. As I said, the Duke of Cambridge has landed at Aberdeen Airport. We understand that he is in a car on his way to Balmoral. We also know, we've learned in the last few minutes, that the Duke of Sussex is travelling to Balmoral alone. The Duchess of Sussex, as we understand at this present time, is not making the journey to see the Queen. That may change, but sources telling us at the moment the Duke of Sussex is on his way alone.
Thanks, Sarah Jane. Well, let's find out if there's anything to be gleaned from the politicians. Live to Downing Street, our political correspondent Joe Pike is there. And Joe, what is the latest from there?
Well, Dermot, Liz Truss's official spokesman has confirmed she will not be making the trip up to Balmoral. I think it would be a surprise if she did so. Certainly, though, there has been a sense here in number 10, in Whitehall, in Westminster over the last year or so, that although the central constitutional role that the Queen plays as head of state has not changed and will not change, the way she has carried it out, the way she's undertaken that role certainly has. We saw that at the state opening of Parliament early this year in May, where the Queen's speech was actually delivered by her son, the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, with the Duke of Cambridge, Prince William alongside. And we also, far more importantly perhaps, this week saw that changeover of Prime Minister, Boris Johnson tending his resignation, Liz Truss accepting an invitation to form a government not a mile away from here, where you are, Dermot, at Buckingham Palace, but both incoming and outgoing Prime Minister making that 500-mile trip to Royal Deeside, to Aberdeenshire, this private, secluded castle home of monarchs back to the time of Queen Victoria, where the Queen and her family are now gathering. And also last night, I think significantly, a Privy Council meeting which was due to take place virtually, the Privy Council being a group of senior government advisors. That meeting wasn't cancelled but postponed because the doctors, we were told by Buckingham Palace, had advised her to rest. That would have been the moment Liz Truss would have taken an oath to be the First Lord of the Treasury, a title she has alongside Prime Minister, and the words First Lord of the Treasury are the only words on the door of number 10. Now, there's not some huge constitutional problem with that being delayed, but I think it was a sign. I think it's also important to reflect that the Queen has and continues to provide wisdom and counsel to Prime Ministers, and does that so well partly because of her longevity, because she has provided continuity. It is astounding that she has been talking to, knowing, having audiences with Prime Ministers right back to Winston Churchill, people like Churchill, Eden, Macmillan, who are now figures in the history books, who historians debate over the decisions of, who school children, university students learn about. Those were people that the Queen advised at very challenging times, times of crisis, times of change. It is so significant that she has provided that role over 7 decades, and in the 10 decades, of course, in her life. And I think what is so important in the role politicians, certainly here in Westminster, are feeling about what she does, she provides this very familiar face that we all know, and yet she remains an enigmatic figure too.
Joe Pike in Downing Street, many thanks.
Just want to bring you reaction to today's news. Obviously, we've had that statement from Buckingham Palace. We've just had this from the DUP leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, who said there would be an outpouring of emotion across Northern Ireland at the news that the Queen is under medical supervision at Balmoral. Speaking in Belfast, Sir Geoffrey said, "We are all watching with increasing alarm and concern about the news that is breaking. Our thoughts and prayers are with Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family as they gather at Balmoral." I know across Northern Ireland there will be an outpouring of emotion right now. While we continue to wait for news from Balmoral, we've had nothing from Buckingham Palace since that statement earlier on today. Let's bring in the former editor of OK Magazine and royal commentator Martin Townsend. I beg your pardon. Martin, your reaction to the news earlier on today that the Queen, there is concern about her health.
Yeah, I mean, she is sort of 96, and there are going to be concerns about her health, but it feels like quite a significant moment with the family. Obviously, close members of the family flying up to Balmoral to be with her, and it feels like I think we're all sort of hoping and praying, hoping for the best, really, and but it feels like a very significant moment, doesn't it?
It does. we don't want to speculate, we don't want to overreact, but the fact that Buckingham Palace felt the need to put out this statement today when we'd seen the Queen just on Tuesday, that last time we saw her publicly, the official photograph of her inviting the new Prime Minister Liz Truss to form a government, the fact that just a couple of days later they felt the need to put this statement out saying that they were concerned, that is significant, that carries weight.
Yeah, it certainly does carry weight. As I say, I think we can't really speculate at this stage. I mean, the Queen is a remarkable woman. She's a remarkably strong woman, but obviously she is, advancing in years, and so at times like this, the whole nation is concerned. I mean, there's an atmosphere around, of people just hoping that that it will be good news rather than the opposite, and but it feels like a significant moment, and I think we've known the Queen all of our lives, and she feels like someone we all know. We've all grown up with her over the decade. She's always been there for us. She's like the guiding light of the nation, and so there's a kind of collective at the moment holding of breath, I think, across the nation, and we can't speculate, and we would just hope that that it's perhaps better than we thought. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a time for people to reflect and send their well wishes. As you said, nobody wants to speculate or assume the worst, but people very much, as you said, watching and waiting with bated breath. I was speaking to the historian St Anthony Selden earlier on, who said she's the nation's granny. As you said, Martin, she has always been there. And I just wonder how the public have seen the Queen in recent years in terms of, we've just had those phenomenal Jubilee celebrations where if the monarch's popularity was in any doubt, you just had to watch that weekend of celebration and goodwill from the nation unfold.
Yes, goodwill from the nation and goodwill from the entire world, really. I mean, they were extraordinary events, absolutely amazing. They demonstrated that the monarchy is as healthy and strong as ever. And the most amazing display of pageantry, and something that we could all unite around and be proud of, and the most extraordinary summer. And exactly as you would expect from a woman who has just done everything with such style, everything with such amazing dignity. We knew that it would be great, but it was even greater than we expected it to be. And all of those things, all of those memories are going through people's minds of the summer. And as I say, as we wait for whatever news, hopefully good news, but we just don't know. We'll all be individually and collectively reflecting on the Queen and how much she means to us all. And she is like the nation's grandmother without any shadow of a doubt. We all feel we know her. I mean, isn't that extraordinary from somebody, the head of the nation, that we all actually feel a connection to her, a really strong emotional connection to her. And I think that's fantastic sort of testimony to her, the way in which she's conducted herself and the way in which she's worked for us all over the years.
The Queen, a dedicated servant of her people, as I said on Tuesday, carrying out official duties. We understand that she has been receiving state papers every day at Balmoral on her holiday, as she does day in, day out. Some 2 to 3 hours of reading of state papers she does a day, which is perhaps why it took people by surprise, this statement this morning. As I said, we saw her fulfilling official duties on Tuesday. But the Queen, from what we know, is a pragmatist. For a number of years now, she has been shaping the future of the monarchy. She has been whittling down the senior royals to a tight group that will continue her legacy.
Yes. I mean, I think she has prepared the monarchy so brilliantly for the future. I mean, to my mind, I mean, obviously there are challenges, to the monarchy from the outside, some from the inside, and we've seen the sort of slight buffeting of the monarchy over the years, actually, not just in recent times, but throughout it all, the Queen has led so steadfastly, and she has strengthened the monarchy. Is an argument for saying, I know that people sometimes say, oh, well, the monarchy's, having a rotten time or whatever. But my argument would be it's never been stronger, actually. And much of that is due to her steadfastness, to her refusal, really, to change her path, to just carry on doing what she does. And what you were saying earlier about the fact of her keeping on top of her papers, and she is the most avid reader of newspapers. As an ex-newspaper man, I'm so delighted she set such a great example. And she wants to know what's going on in the world. She's always been like that, and it's no surprise that she's been like that this week as well. And across her communications, she is an amazing, remarkable woman. Absolutely amazing.
Martin Townsend, former editor of OK magazine and royal commentator. Really good to speak to you this afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Sarah Jane, thank you. Well, joining me now is Simon Morgan, who served as a Royal Protection Officer to Her Majesty the Queen and other senior members of the royal family from 2006 to 2013. Thanks for joining us, Simon Morgan. And Simon, well, we know that the Queen's doctors, her medical staff are concerned. We're all concerned.
It's certainly an unprecedented move with regards to announcing what the doctors said today, and then seeing senior members of the royal family move from where they are actually up to the Balmoral estate. That's something that we haven't seen before, so we naturally have to look at what is actually going on here.
And the Balmoral estate, we know that you know it well, the Queen knows it well. She loves it. She's been going there all her life.
Very much so. It's the Queen's summer holiday, and kind of over the years of my time, it was always extended by a couple of days each year because, she felt very much at home there and could very much do kind of what she wanted to do away from the prying eyes kind of the public. So it's very much a favourite palace of hers. And certainly the Prince of Wales also stays down the road in Birk Hall. So, yes, it is very, very popular. And certainly now to see other senior members of the family come up will actually put the spotlight onto the Balmoral estate.
Simon, tell me a little bit of your experience working with Her Majesty. What is she like to work for?
She's great to work for. As a boss, you couldn't wish for someone better. Fully understands your role as a protection officer, knows why you're there, and whilst you're trying to work in and around her, she's actually working in and around you to make your life easier, which as a principal is sometimes unheard of. So, a fantastic person to work with, but, understands why you're there, and that is really key for us.
Can you give me an example? Tell me how she worked around you. That sounds quite extraordinary.
When you're in certainly a royal walkabout, you'll be very much watching the crowd, looking for what you expect to see and what you don't expect to see. And if you're standing at a certain point because you're uncomfortable with something, the Queen would actually kind of walk around you, knowing that you're not comfortable with that, rather than trying to walk in front of you. So she very much reads the situation, but has had protection all her life, so she understands how it works, and that's very important to us.
And that's interesting what you say, because she also understands her connection with the British people, and not just with the British people, with so many millions internationally. That must have given you the jitters every now and again, I suspect.
Certainly a royal walkabout is the most challenging aspect of your job as a protection officer. You're putting a senior member of the royal family, in this case the Queen, right in front of the public domain, and you've very much got to be on your game for that particular 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long it lasts. But the royal family fully understand that they have to and want to go and meet members of the public, understand what their lives are like, what their needs are, and just generally talk to them. I mean, thankfully in my time we didn't have the selfie phenomenon, which my colleagues now have to deal with, but nonetheless people wanted FaceTime with the Queen, and they wanted to talk to her, and she would listen and talk back, and you as a protection officer have to manage that.
But Simon, you did get to witness that legendary wit, I imagine, up close and personal.
Yeah, very much so. You know, like I said, a great person to work for, a great understanding, and a very much a high level of wit. You know, one time whilst up on the Balmoral estate, you know, the Queen came around and said, you know, are you going to follow me this time? As if we wouldn't. You know, we were ready to go, and she was just kind of edging the bets as to who was going to go first. But yeah, a tremendous understanding of people.
And I'm sure you'll join us, the entire nation, and so many millions of people around the world in wishing her all the best. Simon Morgan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're watching Sky News. It is just after 5 o'clock. If you are just joining us, we are monitoring the health of the Queen. We are keeping an eye there on the gates at Balmoral. A statement released by Buckingham Palace earlier on today saying that her medical team are concerned about her health. She is comfortable, and senior royals, her children and grandchildren, are gathering at Balmoral to be with her. It is just after 12 o'clock in Washington. We've just had this from the White House. President Biden has been briefed on the health of the Queen. He has been briefed on the health of the Queen, and a statement from President Biden says that his thoughts are with the Queen and her family at this time. So that's the President of the United States briefed on the health of the Queen and sending his thoughts to the monarch and her family. Well, it has been confirmed today by Buckingham Palace that the Queen is under medical supervision. Behind the gates you see there at Balmoral in Scotland. Her doctors became concerned about her health, and Buckingham Palace decided to release a statement around lunchtime today. All of the Queen's children are now thought to be at her side in Balmoral or on their way there. This is the statement following further evaluation this morning. The Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. Well, Prince Charles was pictured earlier today leaving Dumfries House in Ayrshire to travel to Aberdeenshire. The Queen's grandchildren are also gathering. A little later, a plane landed at Aberdeen Airport. This was carrying other members of the royal family, including Prince William and Prince Andrew, we understand. We have also learnt this afternoon that Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, is on his way to Balmoral. We understand that he is travelling alone. Like his brother, Prince William, he is not travelling with his wife, the Duchess of Cambridge, remaining in Windsor, and the Duchess of Sussex, we understand, remaining in London. We have heard from a number of world leaders today and senior political figures. The whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. That is from Liz Truss. If we can just go back to that live shot of Balmoral, cars arriving there. We did see the Duke of Cambridge arrive at Aberdeen Airport a little earlier on, getting into a car to head to Balmoral, but cars arriving there, unsure at this point who is in them. Our correspondent James Matthews is there, so we'll try to find out a little more. But let's just return to some of the tributes that are being paid to the Queen and the well wishes being sent to Scotland as we continue to monitor the monarch's health. The Archbishop of Canterbury took to social media earlier saying, "My prayer and the prayers of the people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen today. May God's presence strengthen and comfort Her Majesty, her family, and those who are caring for her at Balmoral." Well, those cars that you just caught a glimpse of going in the gates at Balmoral, we understand, were carrying members of the royal family, senior members of the royal family. Prince Edward, we understand, was in that car. Let's bring in James Matthews, who's there at Balmoral, for a little more. James, it's all very fluid at the moment. We know that some senior royals are at Balmoral already, a number still arriving. So, you know, it's very much in flux at the moment. But what do you know about what's happening?
Thanks, mate. Prince Edward was in at least one of those vehicles that we've just seen, a convoy of 4 in total. It's unclear at this stage if it was somebody else. it's unclear, but clearly there will be arrivals over the course of the next few hours into the evening. Edward's certainly in one of those vehicles. The Duke of Cambridge we saw arriving at Edinburgh Airport, so if he wasn't in that particular convoy of 4, he won't be far away. Prince Charles was already on the estate, of course. He has been there. He's actually been there in recent weeks. Today, he has spent several hours behind the gates of the Balmoral estate. He's been in the company of his mother on and off over the past few weeks. You'll remember that on Saturday, he took her place at the Braemar gathering. And on Saturday itself, I know that before that outing in the late afternoon, he had been in the company of his mother for several hours. His mother, of course, who was in good form in recent days and has been in recent weeks in a part of the world where she feels very comfortable. It is, she enjoys privacy, she enjoys the opportunity to be herself with her family away from the public gaze, and that is a large part of the attraction for her here at Balmoral. People close to the royal family talk about her being comfortable, having picnics, enjoying barbecues with the family, doing the washing up and so on. It's a secluded part of Aberdeenshire where she enjoys privacy, and at this time in particular, perhaps something that's the family around her will value. So we've seen arrivals. Prince Charles was already inside Balmoral. Edward is here. Indeed, Prince Charles, the presence of Prince Charles at Balmoral was the first indicator today that things weren't quite right. He was due to attend an occasion in Lanarkshire. It was a royal visit. That was cancelled, and that was the first indication that perhaps there was something rather more pressing for him and his time closer to his home in Balmoral. So there will be arrivals by car. Aberdeen Airport, the route between Aberdeen Airport and Balmoral, the A93, is a well-worn path for the Royals, particularly at this time of year. So we're expecting to see more. Harry will be among them as the evening progresses, and we'll see more arrivals here. But in that convoy of 4, the family has begun to gather. Edward was in that convoy, possibly others. We'll confirm in due course.
James, for the moment, thank you.
Well, here outside Buckingham Palace, the world's press are gathering, and many tourists and visitors standing outside the gates of Buckingham Palace awaiting news. Let's speak to our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills. And Rhiannon, at the moment, we have simply that statement concerning the Queen's health and the knowledge that so many members of the royal family are gathering at Balmoral.
And yes, interesting, Dermot, there that you should talk about the crowds gathering outside of Buckingham Palace. Of course, at any time of year, you're going to have a crowd there. Tourists always flock there when they come to London. But I think it is a reminder that for many, this news will come as a great concern, not least because it is hugely unusual that the royal family should decide to allow the officials at Buckingham Palace to give us any real details about the Queen's health. So I think the fact that, around 12:30 this lunchtime, that we were told that doctors were so concerned about Her Majesty's health that they recommended that she should stay under medical supervision. Immediately, I think for those of us who follow the royal family closely, it did set alarm bells, it did raise concern. The palace also saying that at the moment she remains comfortable and she is at Balmoral. There were some suggestions that potentially she'd had a fall, but they were quick to kind of shut down that speculation. But also very quickly, they told us that the family had been told that she was deemed to need this medical supervision, and also that they were heading to Balmoral, which again, of course, only elevates those concerns for the Queen's health. In some ways, though, I think what is quite a shock in terms of hearing this news is the fact that it was only, on Tuesday that we saw the Queen front and centre, once again, carrying out one of her key constitutional roles. And certainly in the last few weeks, it was being made very clear that the Queen was determined that she would still be the one who would be there to say farewell to Boris Johnson, her 14th Prime Minister, as he tendered his resignation, and then subsequently welcome her 15th Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Of course, it was decided, as has sometimes been the case, that plans and logistics would have to be changed because the Queen, or doctors decided ultimately that the Queen wasn't able to make that journey down to London, that simply it would be foolish for her to do that. And so they wanted to make sure that a plan was in place to make sure that the Queen knew what she was doing and also her outgoing and incoming Prime Minister. But it did mean that we have got those photographs, very recent photographs of the Queen beaming from ear to ear as she met Liz Truss and began what is a very important relationship, of course, for any new Prime Minister. I think also for both the outgoing Prime Minister and palace officials, and no doubt the Queen herself, it was important that we saw her that day. We haven't actually seen the Queen carrying out any public official duties since July, when she visited a hospice with Princess Anne. And on that occasion, as we have seen quite frequently over the last 12 months, she did have that walking stick with her, a reminder that there have been those mobility issues certainly increasing over the last 12 months. But in essence, I think the palace and Number 10 are very conscious that for some people at the moment now feels like an unsettling time for this country. When you think about economic pressures, pressures on families, and also some might say political uncertainty. We have literally only just got a new Prime Minister. So to see the Queen there carrying out that constitutional role, even at the age of 96, I think for some across this country, yes, not everyone agrees with a hereditary monarchy, but for some up and down the country, she is still a symbol of stability and continuity. And that's exactly what we again saw her on Tuesday, continuing her duties as we've seen her carry out throughout her 70-year reign.
And Rhiannon, in terms of the senior royals, the members of the family that are either at Balmoral or travelling there, so we understand her 4 children, Charles and Andrew and Edward, are there or on their way there, and their partners, and also Prince William and Harry. But do we know, we understand that Meghan will not be travelling with Harry. What about the Duchess of Cambridge?
Yeah, so we were also told that the Duchess of Cambridge also isn't going to be there. Their 3 children this morning started their new school. You may have seen those pictures of them going for a settling in afternoon yesterday at Lambrook. So I think the decision was made that she wouldn't be making that journey up. And who knows, but subsequently that may have impacted the decision as to whether or not Meghan decided to fly up there. I think it's hugely significant that the family are gathering there increasingly over the last 12 months. I think very publicly we've seen just how much affection they have for the Queen as a great-grandmother, a grandmother and a mother, and that was abundantly clear throughout the Platinum Jubilee weekend, where for the first time we saw that the Cambridge children really out for any kind of prolonged period of time. There are those wonderful pictures, aren't there, of the Queen on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, talking to Prince Louis, who had his hands over his ears as there was that fly past. The Queen, of course, more than used to seeing many fly pasts during her reign. Many people talk about the fact that she is probably one of the most experienced people when it comes to watching military pageantry. But yes, such a lovely image on the Platinum Jubilee of her reassuring Louis in a way about what was happening, and we've so often seen that. And I think it's been interesting over the last few years to see more softer images of the Queen at times. Certainly around her 96th birthday, a photograph was released of her sitting in front of a window at Windsor Castle. And for her 96th birthday and then for her Platinum Jubilee, I think the messaging was, yes, this is a remarkable head of state that, frankly, most of us can't remember a time when she wasn't Queen. But also, this is a woman who has, throughout her life, been balancing those challenges of carrying out her constitutional duties, getting on with the job in hand, but also making sure that she was there to support her family. And look, there have been difficulties, of course, with the family, certainly in recent years. And of course, back in the 1990s, it was a very difficult time. But yeah, today the family will all be coming together there at Balmoral, where, don't forget, they all have really fond memories of spending time with the Queen in Scotland. It's a very important place for all of them, where they get to kick back in the seclusion of the wildness of the Highlands and spend time together away from the prying eyes of the cameras and enjoy that countryside life. We've seen that in so many home videos of the royal family and photographs. So, yeah, I think it's obviously a place that they're very familiar with, and obviously all of them wanting to make what is quite a long journey up to Aberdeenshire to be with the Queen at this moment.
Rhiannon, many thanks. Rhiannon Mills, our royal correspondent there. Well, joining me now is Dr. Anna Hemming, who spent 7 years as a resident in-house doctor at Buckingham Palace, looking after the royal family and the royal household. Very good to talk to you, Dr. Hemming. Well, that statement released by the Queen's medical staff, it says it in the statement, doctors are concerned. She is under medical supervision, but remains comfortable. Just dissect that for us and the decision to release that information.
Well, certainly we didn't release information lightly, and I think we just have to remember that the Queen is a remarkable woman and has been with us for a very long time. So we just have to hope that she's very comfortable and that she is with her family, and they can help her if she can recover. They can help her with that.
Yeah, and that is a calculation, isn't it? Medical confidentiality, privacy, but of course she is Her Majesty the Queen. People want to know. People are worried for her, but the other side of the coin is, of course, you don't want to have an intrusive running commentary.
No, and I think that, you know, for her and for her family and for everybody who goes through this process, you know, there are obviously friends and family that are concerned, and when you're a public profile with such a huge profile, that the nation and most of the world will be concerned. But at the centre of this is somebody who's unwell, and they need the peace and the time and the people around them that they love. So the fact the family is going to be with her now, whatever she's going through, is obviously going to be of much comfort to her.
And she's had a normal slowing down of people as they get into later life over the past few, well, decades, I suppose.
Well, absolutely. And I think that being 96 and being a full working royal is an incredible job. So, yeah, I'm actually very pleased that somebody has calmed her down a little bit. And, yeah, she's been amazing.
I can't ask you, I know, of course, about specific details of your interactions with her, but you know, what was it like to work with her, to help her? What was she like what is she like to talk to?
So the Queen and all of those that work with her are an incredible team, and it's amazing to have been part of that and to help many people through their service and maintain their health. So for me, working with that team was wonderful. It was an incredible experience and something that, you know, 7 years of that I will never forget. So it was wonderful. I would never release any information. It's just not what we do.
But there are specific challenges there, you know, as you mentioned, you know, about keeping the show on the road. I'm sure sometimes you have to do running repairs for the royals.
Well, I think like everybody, you know, we have incidences, things happen. None of us are superheroes, unfortunately. So obviously there are things that need to be done in the course of prevention and protection, and making sure that everything that is undertaken by the royal family is safe. So yes, they do have teams in place in order to do that.
When you say making sure that everything is safe, do you mean just from a a medical point of view? Because I've just been talking to a Royal Protection Officer. We know the safety side of that. Where does that interact with the medical team?
Well, I think from a medical perspective, obviously all of the trips, the tours, etc., that the royal family do, that there will be a medical report that is made. But to be honest with you, when you're looking after such an important person and an important family, all of these things just need to be done.
Yeah, I suppose, yes, when you're talking about royal tours, then you've got inoculations, injections, diets, so many other issues.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Hemming, very good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Anna Hemming there, who spent 7 years working alongside the royal household in Buckingham Palace, looking after their health. And in terms of the Queen's health at the moment, this is what we are hearing, a statement released by Buckingham Palace, the official spokespeople at Buckingham Palace here, saying that doctors are concerned about the Queen's health. Therefore, she has been put under medical supervision at Balmoral after that concern was raised. And as Dr. Hemming was telling us there, she is said to be comfortable. So many statements coming into us, statements of support from the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister Liz Truss, who was only there 2 days ago at Balmoral to meet Her Majesty the Queen, making that journey back there today. The senior members of the royal family, who we understand are gathering, either have gathered or are on their way to Balmoral.
Well, let's just update you with what's been happening at Balmoral within the last half an hour or so. We understand Princes Andrew and Edward, the Queen's sons, have arrived at Balmoral to be with the monarch, as has Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, the Queen's grandson. And, of course, after Prince Charles, heir to the throne. Prince Charles, we understand, arrived at Balmoral earlier on today. He has been in Scotland in recent days, so wasn't too far away when that call came that doctors are concerned about the Queen's health. The royal family was informed and the decision was taken that senior royals needed to go to Balmoral to be with the Queen. We understand that the Duke of Sussex is on his way as well. Prince Harry, we are expecting him to arrive at Aberdeen Airport and, like before him, make that journey to Balmoral. Well, the Queen's former Scottish Communications Secretary, Louise Tate, joins me now. Louise, the Queen today has been described by historian Sir Anthony Selden, I was speaking to him earlier, as the nation's granny. She has always been there, and the world is watching. People are tuning into us today to find out how the Queen is. We watch and we wait, but it's important to remember that she is actually a granny. She's a mama, as Prince Charles calls her, and the family are gathering in Balmoral today. Perhaps you can give us an insight as to what it will be like inside Balmoral. It's a vast estate, it's a big structure, but the royal family and the Queen in particular occupies a smaller compartment, so it will be a very small family gathering in that sense.
Well, as I think I've said before, Balmoral, it is a castle, but it's, in terms of a castle, it's still quite an intimate space. And I think that because they've spent so much time there as a family together, this will be, it's just like it is a home. It is a home, and they will feel that they are coming to that home, but something that's familiar to them, and they know that that's where Her Majesty is very, very happy and always has been. So that I think that they will feel that they are around her in one of her favourite places at this time.
We're just showing viewers an image that was taken not so long ago, about half an hour or so ago, of Prince William driving his uncle, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward into Balmoral. They arrived at Aberdeen Airport a little earlier and drove to Balmoral through those gates, and we assume are now with the Queen. We understand that Prince Harry is on his way. Let's go back to how this all began earlier on this afternoon, around 12:30 lunchtime. That statement was released by Buckingham Palace. And Louise, as a communications secretary, what will have gone into that? Because it came as a shock to so many people, because we saw the Queen publicly only on Tuesday inviting the new Prime Minister Liz Truss to form a government. We understand she carried out another engagement later in the day to award a member of her staff with an honour. That was a private matter. You know, we haven't got any pictures of that, but she was very much active until recently. So talk to me about what will have been going on in terms of putting that statement out there and the wording of it. So much thought and care will have gone into it.
Indeed, but I think that given that there was the Privy Council meeting was cancelled, that Her Majesty would not take part in that, and then if the message was to the family to come and join Her Majesty at Balmoral, it would have been very difficult for so many members of the family to make that journey without it being noticed. So I think that it was the right thing to do. It clarified the situation. Inevitably, it'll be seen as a significant move and things will be read into that. But it is a very carefully worded statement, and that's rightly so. And I think that they just tried to avoid speculation as much as they could by giving some clarity, really.
Louise, given that, and given that we know very clearly the Buckingham Palace do not provide a running commentary on anything, least of all the Queen's health, this statement is being seen as significant. When can we expect to hear something else? What kind of update will come? Will there come? Will any updates come? Because I'm just looking at this screen and I'm mindful of the fact that hundreds of thousands, millions of people across the world are going to be watching those gates. Will the palace be mindful of that, or will it be business as usual in terms of communications?
I think that really it will be business as usual. They are not going to give a running commentary. They're not going to follow the news cycle, unfortunately. This will be dictated by events as they happen or don't happen. So we will just have to wait, unfortunately.
OK, Louise, you're watching and waiting with us, and as somebody who knows the Queen, I can only begin to understand how difficult that is. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us here on Sky News. I'm sure we will speak in the coming hours and days. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, now watching and waiting here at Buckingham Palace as we keep our eyes on the gates of Balmoral Castle. I want to talk now to a professor of British politics and the Constitution at University College London and co-editor of The Role of Monarchy in Modern Democracy, Professor Robert Hazel. Very good to talk to you, Professor Hazel. Now, it's a difficult time for any nation when its head of state is under medical supervision because their doctors are concerned about their health.
Indeed, but this is a contingency which will have long been prepared for, and so people in government as well as in the palace will be rolling out those contingency plans. And there are two things that might happen. The Queen might become seriously ill, and if she becomes so ill that she is incapable, through infirmity of body or mind, of performing the royal functions, and I'm quoting now from the Regency Act, then a regent would be appointed to carry out the functions of being the sovereign in her place, and that would be Prince Charles. So that's one kind of contingency plan, which people will have near the top of their minds. The other is, if sadly the Queen is very seriously ill and were to die, then there are very well rehearsed plans for a very grand royal funeral known as Operation London Bridge, and all that has been planned for years in advance, and it will be the biggest state funeral any of us have seen for a very long time, and possibly in the whole of our lifetimes.
So as you describe it, and as we understand it, there is never a moment, even a moment, when the United Kingdom is without a head of state, either a king or queen or a regent.
That's right. So the moment the Queen dies, Prince Charles becomes king, although formally that would be declared the next day. at a special meeting of the Privy Council known as an Accession Council. A regency is slightly different in that it has to be formally declared by 3 out of 4 very senior officials. And those are the Lord Chancellor, the Lord Chief Justice, the Speaker of the House of Commons, and the Lord Chancellor. So they will all have been briefed about their role. And if a regency is declared, it can only be done on the basis of evidence, including medical evidence, which will be submitted to them. And if that happens, the declaration is made at a meeting of the Privy Council. And we will all learn then if a regency has been created, and the regent would then be Prince Charles. And he would be regent acting in the name of the Queen, not only of the United Kingdom, but of all the other 14 countries around the world, where the Queen is also head of state. Let us not forget, she's Queen of Australia, Queen of Canada, Queen of New Zealand, Queen of Jamaica, Queen of other places in the Caribbean and in the Pacific.
And Professor Hazel, just give me your assessment of how Her Majesty negotiates this. I mean, it's a rather extraordinary, is it a unique role in terms of the British Constitution and how it has just evolved and the separation of powers?
Well, as everyone acknowledges, she has been an extraordinarily conscientious monarch. She has devoted the whole of her life to public service, worked incredibly hard. The Queen receives state boxes every day of the year, with only 2 exceptions, Christmas Day and Easter Day. Not many people work as hard as she does right through into their 90s. And so she will be remembered not only for her extraordinarily long reign, but also for the extraordinary devotion that she has shown throughout that reign to her public duty. I think I needn't say any more than that. This is very well known. She has been a remarkably conscientious, as well as a remarkably long-serving monarch.
Professor Hazel, Robert Hazel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, let's bring in our Scotland correspondent, James Matthews, who is at Balmoral. And James, within the last hour, senior members of the royal family have arrived, have gone through those gates to be with the Queen. Talk us through what's been happening.
Yeah, about 20 minutes ago, we saw a convoy driven from Aberdeen Airport, driven in the lead vehicle by Prince William. He was in the driver's seat. Next to him was his uncle, the Duke of York, and in the back were Edward and Sophie. So the family gathering is increasing in size. Among those still to arrive, of course, is Harry, who we expect at some point over the coming hours. Prince Charles, he was there from early in the morning. He had actually been due to take part in a royal visit in central Scotland, but that was cancelled, and that was the first inkling that we had that things weren't quite right today. I can tell you the weather is pretty brutal here at the moment, raining extremely heavily. As you can see, it was raining very heavily on Tuesday when we last saw the Queen in the drawing room of Balmoral when she met and appointed the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. She made that Aberdeen Airport to Balmoral journey, and by all accounts, the Queen was in good form. She remarked on the weather, saying to her press secretary and photographer in the drawing room at the time how dark it was in the skies overhead. She's well used to it, of course, and quite enjoys, actually, this part of the world, notwithstanding the weather. She has been coming here for many years. This is a time of year when she and the family enjoy summer holidays together, and it is a place of family gatherings on a day when we are seeing the family come together. That is a well-practiced routine, albeit in happier circumstances through time. They have barbecues, they have sleepovers. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren are invited to a large family gathering on the Balmoral estate. Harry, who we expect to arrive later today, he and Meghan actually had been invited to come and spend time at Balmoral for that sleepover, the Queen's sleepover, but they were also invited by Prince Charles, Harry's father. That wasn't an invitation that was taken up, but clearly circumstances have dictated otherwise, and Harry will be part of that family group around the Queen at this most difficult time.
James, I think the weather just about summing it up. James Matthews at Balmoral for us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Now, well, let's talk now to the editor of the Crown Chronicles, Victoria Howard. Thank you for joining us, Victoria. And first of all, your reaction to this statement from Buckingham Palace about the Queen's health, about the fact under medical supervision, and doctors are concerned about her health.
It's highly unusual for them to comment in such a straightforward way. We often get from the palace these kind of allusions to something not being right, you know, undergoing examinations or tests. So for them to say she is ill is quite significant, and for them to make a statement about it, that the family are also visiting, hugely, hugely significant. And I think that we can therefore draw the conclusions that this is a very serious situation with regards to the health of the monarch.
And in terms of what they let us know because we're not trying to intrude, but because we are all concerned, they are being very careful about what they've said subsequently, Buckingham Palace.
Absolutely. Of course, they're saying this because it's important that we know she is our monarch, she's our head of state, she's a core component of the constitutional monarchy and the way the government works. So it is important that people are made aware of these things. However, they kind of don't want to give too much away. We only have to think, of course, it was so long ago, but when George VI passed in 1952, the cards were played very close to the chest. The announcement wasn't made for a while, of course, to let the family kind of deal with that initial shock of the event itself. But I do think it's important that we know. We don't necessarily need all those details, that the public will just run with those. And of course, you know, they want to keep us assured she is under great medical care. She's got some of the best medical teams around the world. But to give us any further details would probably be inappropriate, as she is a public figure, but of course she has a private life too.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? This is for the family first and foremost. But, I mean, she's not just a national figure, she's an international figure, one of the best known people in the entire world.
Exactly. So there's public interest naturally, and that's why we see many things that with the way the royal family works. For example, the first day of school for Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, we get a little insight into that day. We get a photo release of the event itself, but then they are allowed to go on as normal people as possible, of course, with that kind of royal status hanging over them. It's just important that they do keep us in the loop, though, because not only is she, you know, part of the system, the functioning system of government, people really respect her. She's been our monarch for 70 years. And for them to be kept in the loop after a platinum jubilee that went off so well, she clearly really enjoyed that. Thousands of people came to London to join in those celebrations with her. I think they're just very conscious of the fact of the goodwill that people have for the Queen. So just want to kind of steer it. And I think this is part of that process that's been happening for a while now, with us seeing Prince Charles as this next king. This is, of course, what we all think about when we hear these kind of worrying statements about her health. And it's just the natural progress of life, of course. But many people have kind of been worried about Charles as the next king. So this is them setting that up, and he has been stepping up in terms of duties for a number of months, if not years.
Indeed, a number of years, and we saw that, I suppose, particularly at the state opening of Parliament. And this is being carefully managed, the idea that there is a team, an experienced team.
Exactly. And of course, this sort of plan has been in place for a very long time to deal with the eventual time that the Queen passes. We all know it's been trending on Twitter today. London Bridge is the code name for that plan. And it's just the process, which is militarily precisely organised, that everyone knows exactly what happens and what the processes and next steps are to move with that succession, to keep things going for the British monarchy. So, of course, many people at the palace and in the royal teams are actually former military personnel or are on secondment to the palace from the armed forces. So you can just imagine how strictly controlled and precise all of these plans are.
And Victoria, just tell us a bit about Balmoral itself. We saw Her Majesty receiving Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and then asking Liz Truss to become Prime Minister just 2 days ago. She wasn't able to travel to London for that changeover because of the mobility issues we all knew she had. But Balmoral is the place that is perhaps closest to her heart, and indeed the royal family's heart, and has been for many, many years and generations.
Exactly. So Balmoral was actually built by Prince Albert, Prince Albert and Queen Victoria in the mid 1800s, sorry, and it became this gathering place for them during the summer holidays. So for them to continue that tradition, the monarchy loves tradition. The royals do like that kind of reassuring nature of things. So every generation since has returned to Balmoral for this kind of summer and holiday. It's often cited, of course, being located in the middle of the Scottish Highlands as a real place where they can actually relax. There are no cameras around because it's all private land, that they can enjoy their outdoor pursuits without, worrying people seeing them, for example. And they are very much an outdoorsy family, so enjoying walks and hikes, fishing, etc. And it's really just a place they really enjoy, that relaxation time that they just simply can't get in London, partly because of all the duties, but partly because of the nature of the city and the people that are always around them. So that photo of the Queen meeting Liz Truss, she was in her tartan skirt and a cardigan, much more relaxed, much more informal than kind of her usual day wear that we might see. And I think that's just really reflective of the place it holds in their heart. It does feel like a home, because it isn't more of an office as Buckingham Palace or Windsor, for example.
Good to talk to you, Victoria. Thank you very much indeed. Victoria Howard there from the Crown Chronicles.
Well, joining me now is the historian and author Sir Anthony Selden. Sir Anthony, it's important to remember that so many people watching today around the world, the Queen is not just the sovereign of the UK, but also 14 Commonwealth realms in addition as well. This really does have the eyes of the world on it today.
Isn't it incredible? There's no leader in the world who has been there almost continuously since the end of the Second World War. The most photographed, the most famous face in the world. A lot of Britain's in the world is dependent upon her. A lot of people come to London, including presidents of the United States, to visit her. They're keener on visiting her in Buckingham Palace or Windsor than prime ministers who, for all their strengths, they come and they go. 15 in the life of Her Majesty, and let's hope there'll be more, although Liz Truss would probably hope not too soon, not too many more. So an extraordinary figure. Also just reflecting there that one thing that she does have is that at least she can be assured about the continuity of her family. One of the most enduring anxieties for her predecessors as the monarch of England all the way back to the Norman Conquest in 1066 has been, will there be somebody to succeed? It worried her predecessor Elizabeth I, greatly, who died without child, and Victoria did have the Prince of Wales, who became Edward VII, but she was very worried about him and whether he really would step up to the mark, and whether he was a little bit too interested in the big things, in the luxuries of life, to take the job seriously. In the end, actually, he did quite well.
Can we talk about the Queen's years of service, 70 years, recently celebrating her Platinum Jubilee? The Queen is a hard-working royal. We're just looking at pictures of her out and about. These are the public engagements that we see. There is so much that we don't see.
Absolutely. Is, let us remember, the head of state. So the Prime Minister comes to the head of state to be invited to form a government, the Queen isn't invited by anybody at all. She is the sovereign. She is the ultimate authority, although that sovereignty is shared, obviously, with Parliament. But she is the linchpin of the Constitution. She sees all the papers, as we were hearing. She knows deeply, has a wisdom, has an institutional memory, has understanding of all the issues, all the personalities in this country and abroad, possessed by nobody else. So prime ministers do find it a privilege to listen to her. And if they are wise, and many of them have been, they do listen to her and they do follow that advice. Of course, we'll never, ever know what that advice is because it is a great hidden part of the Constitution that we will never know what the monarch and the says as head of state to the head of government. But extraordinarily hardworking, and she's kept going. And you know, isn't that remarkable? 70 years still to be working, 36 years beyond the age of 60, when many people have retired. The way she kept going after the death of her beloved husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, that's a contrast, isn't it, with Queen Victoria, who went into hiding after her husband, Prince Albert, died and made the monarchy very unpopular. But the Queen was straight back at us, and she was doing her work in private and in public to keep going, indefatigable, extraordinarily heroic. So the most famous person in the world, and justifiably so.
Certainly, you touched on it earlier. The Queen is all most of us, the majority of us, have ever known. This second Elizabethan age we have lived in. Can you put into historical context Queen Elizabeth II? How important and historical figure in the decades to come is this monarch going to be?
Well, enormous because of longevity, the longest serving monarch. Female monarchs are long-lasting. Elizabeth I, 1588 to 1603, and Queen Victoria, 1837 to 1901, 64 years, outdone by the Queen. Of course, we must remember that the earlier monarchs, before the extension of the voting in the 19th century, it was head of state, the monarch, who had the real ultimate power, and power has passed in the last 100 years progressively to the politicians, to the Prime Minister. So you can't really compare her to, say, Elizabeth I or Henry VIII or Edward III, because they had such different jobs that they were doing. They really were the people who ran the country and terrorized the country. And yet we can contrast her with the politicians who she served with other monarchs abroad. And she has defined the era. In 100 years' time, people will write about the Elizabethan era. And maybe this is the moment that we stop talking about the post-war period and we see the period as ending with the death, when it comes, of Queen Elizabeth II. So I think an importance politically, but also psychologically for all of us, the fact that she is so important. She is the nation's grandmother, and I think her death will remind us, when it comes, of our own losses and sadnesses, because that's the kind of figure she is, including children. The Paddington Bear at the Platinum Jubilee, just an extraordinary showing, as was the James Bond during the Olympics. I mean, who would think that this lady in her 80s and 90s could keep with it, could keep relevant even to children?
She has resonance with so many people, and that's reflected in so many of the messages we're getting here this evening at Sky News from people watching as we watch and wait for an update on the Queen's health from Balmoral. Sir Anthony Selden, thank you.
Let's go live now to Downing Street. Our political correspondent, Joe Pike, is there. And Joe, this is quite an extraordinary day. The news of the deterioration in the Queen's health coming on a day that politically could define Liz Truss's premiership.
Exactly, Dermot. Today was perhaps the most significant announcement of Liz Truss's premiership, the most expensive one perhaps, £150 billion. Some estimate this big energy bills package will cost. And it was during a debate on that topic in the House of Commons that Nadeem Zahawi, a Cabinet Office Minister, passed a note to Liz Truss, spoke to the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, and also Keir Starmer, the opposition leader, was spoken to. Clearly, from the body language and the faces of these senior politicians, something concerning had happened. And indeed, Liz Truss, Keir Starmer and other party leaders have tweeted messages of concern. Certainly there has been a sense in Westminster, in Whitehall, here at number 10, for the past year, I think, that although the Queen's central constitutional role as head of state has not changed, will not change, the way she has undertaken it certainly has. We saw that at the state opening of Parliament, the Queen's speech, as some call it, where that speech was delivered not by the Queen but by her son, the Prince of Wales, with the Duke of Cambridge sitting alongside him. We also, of course, saw a change this week with that handover of power, Boris Johnson resigning and Liz Truss being asked to form an administration. Normally, of course, Dermot, those politicians would, well, the outgoing Prime Minister would travel from here, from 10 Downing Street, a mile away to where you are in Buckingham Palace, and said it was a 500-mile journey to Balmoral, that private, secluded castle that has been a home of monarchs right back to the time of Queen Victoria in the 1850s. Also, I think, significant that last night a Privy Council meeting was due to be taking place, the Privy Council being this group of senior government advisors. Now, the Queen would have presided over that meeting using video conferencing software from Balmoral. It would not have been a face-to-face meeting, and yet, at the last moment, a couple of hours, I think, before it was due to take place, it was not cancelled but postponed, and we were told by Buckingham Palace that the Queen's doctors were advising her to rest. That would have been the moment where Liz Truss would have taken the oath to become First Lord of the Treasury, a title she holds alongside Prime Minister. First Lord of the Treasury are the only words on the letterbox of number 10 Downing Street on that front door. So these events happening in a different way were signs clearly of a shift. And I think it's also worth reflecting on a role the Queen has provided, not in public but in private, to Prime Ministers, and a role she has continued to provide with wisdom and counsel. That wisdom being particularly valuable partly because of her longevity and the continuity that she has provided as well. Many of the Prime Ministers that she has counselled, supported, worked alongside, often through crises, through times of change, many of them are now figures in history books, figures whose decisions are debated on by historians, by school students, by university students, people like Winston Churchill, but of course Eden, Macmillan, more recently Edward Heath, Margaret Thatcher. The Queen has, through 15 Prime Ministers, provided that continuity, and her advice, I think, is so valued because of her longevity. There has been a change. She is in her 10th decade. She has provided, occupied that role now for 7 decades. If you speak to people in Westminster who have met her, who've known her, albeit briefly, there is this strange mix that she is a familiar face for them and for many of us, and yet still she remains, I think, Dermot, a pretty enigmatic figure.
Joe Pike, many thanks.
Well, joining me now, Dean of Miami Herbert Business School at the University of Miami, John Quelch, who was awarded his CBE by the Queen back in 2011. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon here on Sky News. First of all, how is the news of the Queen's health being received in Miami today?
The Queen is an extraordinarily admired figure in the United States as well as worldwide, and perhaps next to the Pope is perhaps the most recognized apolitical international figure on the world stage. She is extraordinarily admired in Boston, where I was present in 1976 when she visited for the US Centennial, and in all parts of the United States. I think there's a deep affection and admiration for this consummate, quiet leader.
Can you talk to me about your experience with the Queen, your meeting of the Queen back in 2011 when you were awarded the CBE? Talk to us about the day and what she said to you.
Well, it was a magnificent day, and as all of those who are privileged to receive an award from the British monarchy know, you approach Buckingham Palace with the hope that the royal standard will be flying over Buckingham Palace, because that means the Queen is in residence and she is going to preside over the ceremony at which you will receive your award. I think the most important impression and reflection I can give you from this occasion, and I have met the Queen on a couple of other occasions as well, but on this occasion, the curiosity, the attentiveness to responses that I gave, and the feeling that even though she said only a few words to me, that I had had a personal and intimate conversation with her. And this, I think, was one of her great strengths that perhaps is not commented on that often. In order to lead lead effectively for 70 years, you have to be very conserving of your energy. And I think she developed a capability to lead while saying little, but projecting a tremendous amount of capability and attentiveness, as I've said, to every person who came into contact with her.
A special occasion to meet the Queen, and many would say a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but you have been privileged enough to meet the Queen on a number of occasions, as you say. Perhaps we could just talk a little bit more about how the Queen is seen in America. You touched on it earlier. Given that the Queen has no official connection to the United States, she's obviously Queen of Commonwealth nations as well as the UK, but considering there isn't that link with the United States, why is there such a special affection for Queen Elizabeth II there?
I think because she's such a unique figure. There is no individual in the United States that I can think of who's held a leadership role for 70 years in a corporation or in any organization, let alone the political arena. So she is a unique and exceptional person in this regard, and that, of course, is part of her fascination. But at the same time, I believe she's admired because she doesn't project drama. She projects continuity and solidity and integrity, and these are all qualities that in many leaders today on the world stage we don't find sufficient abundance of. So there are qualities to her leadership style and her approach to managing family affairs, if I can go down to that personal level, that I think all Americans and citizens around the world can learn from and take lessons from.
John Quelch, lovely words there about the Queen. John Quelch, who was awarded CBE by the Queen back in 2011. Thank you very much for joining us here on Sky News this evening.
Good evening. This is Sky News live from Buckingham Palace. Senior royals have gathered at Balmoral after confirmation that the Queen is under medical supervision because her doctors have become concerned about her health. All of the Queen's children are thought to now be at her side in Balmoral. Prince Charles was seen leaving Dumfries House in Ayrshire to travel to Aberdeenshire. And a bit later on, a plane landed at Aberdeen Airport carrying members of the royal family. That included Prince William and Prince Andrew. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said, following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended that she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. The Prime Minister then tweeted that the whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. She continued, "My thoughts and the thoughts of people across our United Kingdom are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time." The Archbishop of Canterbury tweeted, "My prayers and the prayers of the people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen today." It continues, "May God's presence strengthen and comfort Her Majesty, her family, and those who are caring for her at Balmoral." Let's bring in our royal correspondent now, Rhiannon Mills. And Rhiannon, do we understand now that all the senior members of the royal family are now at Balmoral?
So it seems that the only person who may well be missing at the moment from Balmoral is Prince Harry, who purely by luck is in this country this week carrying out a series of engagements. So we are still waiting to find out when he is going to arrive. But yes, we saw other members of the royal family arriving in the last couple of hours after having to fly all the way up from here, all the way up to Aberdeenshire. We know that Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall were already in the area. They were already staying at Birk Hall and also due to carry out some engagements in Scotland, both today and tomorrow. So they got there very quickly. Also, Princess Anne, she was also in the area because she'd carried out engagements. But then this afternoon we saw the cars carrying Prince William, the Earl and Countess of Wessex, so Prince Edward and Sophie, and also Prince Andrew, because we heard actually quite early on today that members of the royal family had been informed that doctors had decided that the Queen should remain under medical supervision because they were concerned about her health. And the palace, I think, surprising that they should give us that information in itself, but also further surprise the fact that they decided to announce that members of the family would be gathering up in Balmoral. Of course, the palace, not an institution that likes to cause unnecessary worry, concern or attention, but of course the fact that we have this statement saying that the doctors have been concerned about her and now her family are gathering is inevitably going to cause worry. And also, I think, a degree of shock for many of us. You were just seeing pictures there of Tuesday, where the Queen very clearly had told her advisors that she wanted to be the one who, again, carried out the appointment of yet another Prime Minister. Yes, arrangements had to be changed to allow that to happen, but she was still very much front and centre carrying out those constitutional duties. The pictures that we're seeing at the moment actually a year ago, and it does show you just how much things have changed for the Queen. Over the last 12 months, we have seen her carrying out fewer duties, fewer responsibilities, and we have regularly been told by the palace that she was having those episodic mobility issues. But also, I think the palace and the mechanisms that the team around her wanting to make sure that at all times they could adjust the plans and make sure they could facilitate things as much as possible to allow her to continue to carry out her duties. Undoubtedly, this is going to come as a worry to many across the country. But I think for the Queen, certainly her carrying out her duties on Tuesday was once again a sign that that pledge she made when she was just 21 and reinforced this year to mark her Platinum Jubilee, she was and continues to be determined to carry out her duties. And her family, of course, now there to support her in Balmoral.
And of course, Rhiannon, Her Majesty's been at Balmoral all summer, as she has been every summer.
That's right. It's a place that she loves, and you can see why when you travel up to that secluded part of the Highlands. I went for a look around Balmoral earlier in the summer, and there's a wildness to it. And for a family who we know, they love their country pursuits. We know that the Queen is never happier than when she's surrounded by her dogs and also her horses as well. And over the years, many people have talked about how they may well catch a glimpse of the Queen out on her ponies as she's been spending time in Balmoral. But it's also really important family time for her. And actually in the past, I've spoken to the likes of Prince Edward and Prince William about those family times, because you can't forget, for the Queen, 70 years of remarkable public service. 365 days of the year, always looking at those red boxes full of state papers, but also trying to balance family life. And Balmoral is a place where I think to a degree she felt she could do that. And for all of those family members who we can see there in that car, I think now they will be at Balmoral, where of course they've had so many wonderful memories that they have shared with the Queen, but also no doubt catching up with the doctors, trying to get the updates of exactly how she's doing, how she's feeling as we await updates from Buckingham Palace.
And just on the doctors, presumably she has had constant medical attention over the past few years.
Well, I think what's been so interesting about the Queen, and why probably the last 12 months have been a surprise to many as we've seen her in a way handing over some of those responsibilities, is throughout her life she has really enjoyed relatively good health, and we've had the odd cataract operation, or she's had the odd issue potentially with walking. About 6 years ago she was seen with a walking stick, but that soon went. And I was always struck by the fact that well into her 90s she's continued to carry out things that many people in their 80s wouldn't be able to do. For example, walking that long length of Westminster Abbey, or walking up those steep steps at St Paul's, completely unaided, completely unassisted. And so for some people, it has been a shock that she has had to hand over some of those responsibilities, has had to at times say, well, I can't do that. I just can't do that today. But she is 96 years old. But I think what we saw on Tuesday was that resolve to do what she can. And her family, increasingly over the last 12 months, have been there standing by. Of course, we saw it on the Platinum Jubilee weekend. They were all there around her. On the Thursday, she was there on the balcony. She was lighting the first beacon. But then it did take it out of her. She had to relax for a couple of days, rest up for a couple of days. And that was where the family stepped in. But also I think what's been striking over the last 12 months is the Queen has been showing us that she has got great faith in the future, surrounded by the likes of Prince William and Kate, Prince Charles and Camilla, saying, look, I have real faith in the future, and you should too.
Rhiannon, thank you very much.
Well, crowds have been gathering at Buckingham Palace this evening. News broke at around 12:30 this afternoon. That statement coming from Buckingham Palace about the Queen's health, saying that her doctors were concerned for Her Majesty's health and recommended that she remain under medical supervision, adding that the Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. The Queen may not be at Buckingham Palace, but it is very much a focus for those well-wishers who want to head there and send their best wishes to the Queen. We've had no update officially since that statement. We were informed, though, that the Queen's close family were told, and they have since been making their way to Balmoral. Within the last hour or so, we've seen Princes William, Edward and Andrew arrive. Prince William driving Prince Edward and his wife Sophie Wessex and Prince Andrew from Aberdeen Airport to Balmoral to see the Queen. Prince Charles was in Ayrshire, we understand. He took a helicopter to Aberdeenshire, to the Balmoral estate earlier on in the day before that statement came out. And as we understand it, we are now waiting for the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, to arrive at Balmoral. We understand he is making his way there. He is yet to arrive. Well, let's head to Balmoral and our Scotland correspondent, James Matthews. James, despite the weather, which pretty much sums up the mood this afternoon. Crowds are gathering at Buckingham Palace. What's happening there at the Balmoral estate?
Well, crowds-wise, not a lot, actually. Yes, it's the tourist season, but on this filthy day in terms of the weather, there's something like a couple of dozen tourists around. Many media here, of course, to see comings and goings at the gates of the Balmoral estate. And we saw the arrival within the past hour of a four-vehicle convoy. Leading that convoy was Prince William, the wheel of a vehicle that had the Duke of York, his uncle, in the passenger seat, and in the rear seats were Edward and Sophie. I think it's fair to say all were grim-faced as they entered the gates to widen the family gathering around the Queen. Prince Charles, as you said, Sarah Jane, was already inside. He has been inside Balmoral for some hours today. He was due at a royal event in the Central Belt, and that's the first inkling that anybody had that things were not as they should be. And that particular event had to be cancelled. He has substituted, of course, for his mother over recent weeks. Last Saturday it was the Braemar gathering. She would normally attend that. It's one of the events here that is a big draw for the royal family. The Queen particularly enjoys the children's sack race. It's an event that she would typically attend, but not this year. Prince Charles attended the Braemar Highland Games. He also spent some time with his mother on Saturday, several hours, I'm told, and he has been here for a few weeks, as has she. I mean, she's here for a couple of months. Every year at this time of year, it is the base of her summer holiday, and those around her make the point that in terms of where she will continuously sleep in the one place, this is it, Balmoral. She spends 3 months in the one place, in the one bed, and it's a place, of course, she's very fond of. She has changed her routine in accordance with her declining health. Normally she would attend Crathy Kirk every Sunday. COVID, of course, changed that in the initial months, but ever since COVID, she's not attended church. Charles has gone to the nearby Crathy Kirk, but for the Queen, the minister has crossed and worship has taken place within Balmoral Castle itself. In the months of COVID, it took place inside one of the large rooms inside that property, with some distance between the Queen and the visiting minister. She has looked relatively well. People who have seen her in recent weeks lunching with her lady-in-waiting at Inchnabobbert Cottage at Glenmick, picnicking at her mother's old fishing hut by the River Dee. They say that when they've seen her out and about, she's looked fine and relatively healthy, healthier, I'm told, than she did in the past couple of months over the course of the Platinum Jubilee and so on. She's been walking the corgis, walking with a stick and without. And of course, we saw her on Tuesday, the last time we saw her publicly, when she appointed Liz Truss as Prime Minister. The people who were in that room before the Prime Minister arrived, the press secretary and press photographer, they speak about her joking about the dark skies over Balmoral, dark skies that she has become well used to in a place where she has that she has enjoyed, despite the regular inclement weather. But it's, you know, it's a dark day here weather-wise. There is concern, clearly, not just among the royal physicians, but the family as well. I was here 25 years ago, almost to the day, Sarah Jane, when there was another very dark day when Princess Diana died. I remember Prince William, Prince Harry, as young children, walking up this particular road, taking a look at floral tributes. They will be reunited behind the gates of the Balmoral estate in the next few hours, assuming that's when Prince Harry arrives here, probably via Aberdeen Airport. So a family gathering. They're used to family gatherings here in good times and in bad.
Yeah, that's a sobering reminder, James, of what we are watching unfold. As James Matthews has been saying, the majority of senior royals are behind those gates at Balmoral with the Queen. We are just waiting for Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, who we understand is making his way at Balmoral to be with his family. The world is watching and waiting for an update on the Queen's health. It's important to remember that this time that it is a family that is dealing with the ill health of a mother and a grandmother, 96 years of age.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Well, here at Buckingham Palace, yes, indeed, we're watching and waiting. The world is watching and waiting because although Her Majesty the Queen and the members of the royal family are at Balmoral, it's here where you get the information from 6 hours or so ago when that statement was released about the concerns about the Queen's health, the medical supervision that she's now under. Well, as we wait, I'm joined now by Dick Griffin, one of the Queen's former Royal Protection officers. Good to talk to you, Dick.
Hi, Dermot.
You spent many, many years here. Just how long in total did you work in Royal Protection with the Royal Family?
Oh,
for?
gosh, I was there like man and boy, 32 years.
Was that all in the Queen's service? Or
no, I came in initially on the uniform side after the Michael Fagan break-in. And after a year, I was transferred to, as he was, Prince Edward, to take to Cambridge University for 3 years. And then I was promoted and spent 13.5 years looking after the Duke of Edinburgh. And then 1999, I was promoted and moved to Her Majesty the Queen for 14 years until I retired in 2013.
My goodness me.
So 30 years with them.
And you must have been reluctant to retire. Just tell me your thoughts at this time after that statement. It was a real jolt for everyone.
Oh, I mean, it was devastation. I mean, I was lucky enough to be so close to them. And I'm probably as close to them as some of my own family. So to hear such sad news, you know, while we pray to God it'll turn out good news, you know, it's not looking good, so I'm prepared for the worst.
Indeed. Tell us about Her Majesty. I mean, you were in a privileged, a lucky position, as you say. What a wonderful job to have. Talk to me about the relationship you built up with her.
Well, you're lucky enough to, the protection officers who work with her, like all the personal staff, you do build up a very special relationship with her. And you're always conscious of the fact that she's the Queen and you work for her, so you never step over the line. But she's so considerate. She wants to know all about your family, everything you do in your off-duty time, anything you've got. And we talk about, sometimes you're in the car for hours and hours, and occasionally at Balmoral you go out on a picnic with her, and sometimes just the two of you. And you just talked about everything under the sun, and it was just wonderful, wonderful times.
No sense then of boss and employer, and much, much more than that.
Well,
Head
no.
of state, your Queen and subject.
It was clearly Your Majesty and Mum. But somebody asked me this afternoon, I was giving a talk to a U3A group about my life with the Queen, and somebody asked me, has the Queen ever shouted at me? I said, yeah, several times. And 9 times out of 10, there was a good reason for it, and we got over it and we moved on. But no, I was just so lucky to spend that time with her.
What about Balmoral? You say spending, many happy months up there over the years during those long summers, the barbecues?
Well, Balmoral was, I was so lucky because probably I retired in 2013. And 2008, I was planning to retire and I had a job lined up and everything. And went and spoke to the Queen in private and told her I was thinking of retiring in 6 months' time. And she promptly took me out into the hills and had a picnic and set me down in the blanket and spent an hour persuading me not to retire and to stay on for another 5 years and be the policeman for a Diamond Jubilee year, a Platinum Jubilee year. And, you know, so I had to ring my wife up and say, guess what, dear? I'm not retiring, I'm staying on for another 5 years.
And being the Queen, she had the power to do that. I mean, were there any rules within the Met at the time that you had to retire at a certain age?
Well, strange enough, there used to be. A chief inspector, you had to retire at the age of 56 or 57. They changed it slightly, and for me carrying on, I mean, I carried on until I was 62, which is probably a bit long in the tooth. That's why I thought in 2013 I'd better retire, otherwise the Queen will have a 70-year-old protection officer.
Got to ask you about those sticky moments. I mean, you mentioned one of the most memorable, the most difficult, when the barriers were breached, so to speak, at Buckingham Palace. Not just that, Michael Fagan ended up in Her Majesty the Queen's bedroom. What was this, 1981?
82. Yeah, I was part of the team that came in as a result of Michael Fagan. And It was a catalogue of errors. The alarms around Buckingham Palace were completely out of date. They'd go off 30, 40 times a night, so the police had to switch them off and rely on the army and the police to deter intruders. As it happened, Fagin found a blind spot, climbed over the wall, climbed up a drain pipe, got into the stamp room, which gave him access into Buckingham Palace. And of course, 3 in the morning, the staff were all asleep, there's no one around. All he was after was alcohol, cigarettes, food. And of course, and he did it twice. That was the amazing part. When he was interviewed, he said, "This is the second time I've broken in." And of course, on the second time, he found his way. He didn't realise.
We're going to break away from what is going on at Buckingham Palace, where we're seeing live report of the Queen. Queen families are traveling to be by her side, as her doctors has requested that she be under medical supervision. Queen Elizabeth II is under medical supervision, ordered by her queen, ordered by her doctors. I beg your pardon, ordered by her doctors. You can see vast amount of people at Buckingham Palace. They're waiting anxiously to hear what's going on with the Queen. We're going to break away from this report. We have been doing it for over 3 hours. We're going to break away from it to make way for the 12:30 news in Kingston, Jamaica, 1:30 in the United States of America.
The sergeant in the control room, who said to one of his policemen, "Can you go up to the Queen's apartment and see what she wants?" And no urgency, smarten yourself up before you go. And that's why it probably took him 15 minutes to get there.
Well, Dick, thank you very much indeed. I know you're going to stay with us during the course of the evening.